So yesterday, I'm walking out of the studio, and I find myself shaking my head. And I'm like,
oh, boy.
I cannot believe we just had that conversation. And it was a legitimate conversation. It was one that had merit to today's show. At 9 o'clock, you will hear that conversation, I guess, play out from a guest standpoint. Pat Forde, the great college sports writer, SI.com, long time, certainly cover of Louisville in that area, certainly has been plugged into Indiana University throughout the years. And a few weeks back, he wrote, I thought, a really good feature on Curt Cignetti and the Hoosiers. And we had spent multiple minutes after the show yesterday talking about how we need to have a IU football-centric guest on to talk about the undefeated Hoosiers.
I know.
The potentially playoff-bound Indiana Hoosiers.
Right.
The spot for Fox Big Noon kickoff coming up on Saturday.
Right.
What does Indiana's resume need to look like to make the playoffs? And all of that was true and not a dream.
Yeah, I know, and it's halfway. What are we? We're over halfway through the college football season, aren't we, at this point? And we can talk about it. I tell you, if they beat Nebraska on Saturday, which I hope they do because I have this weird sports hatred for Matt Rule for no reason whatsoever. He has done nothing to me.
Really?
I have absolutely.
Former Colts head coaching candidate,
listen,
Matt Rule.
You're supposed to base your hatred on things like why. Give me the why, Andy. I don't have a why other than I'm not a Matt Rule fan. So let's go Cignetti before you go off and go to Florida or wherever, Let's go. I'm kidding. I mean,
it is just amazing to me that this is where we are at. So Pat Forde going to join us coming up 9 o'clock today. Again, I enjoyed the piece on Curt Cignetti from a few weeks back. Good Wednesday morning to you. Thank you for tuning in. Corbin Lingenfelter filling in for Mark Dykton all week long. That was the voice of Andy Sweeney. I am Kevin Bowen. Stephen Holder going to join us at 8 o'clock. Colts will get back to practice later today, and we will await any updates on the DeForest Buckner, Jonathan Taylor front as those news items become front and center here in Week 7 of the NFL.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if I have too much confidence in D-Buck being back. I don't know. I mean, Gus Bradley spoke yesterday. We'll let you hear it later on in the show. Basically, he said, we're having conversations. So I don't know what that's supposed to. They're having conversations, KB. So that's on the DeForest Buckner side. And then we'll play it coming up here in about 15, 20 minutes during your first morning check down. I'm sitting there, me and Corbin are looking at each other, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Jonathan Taylor, he went on the NFL Network this morning. I don't know if that was live. I don't know if that was taped. I guess he was up in the 6 o'clock hour, with us and everybody else.
I think it was from last night.
I think it probably was. So you had Jonathan Taylor, I thought, maybe a little bit, expounding maybe a little bit more than he did yesterday when he and Anthony Richardson were out at a local Dairy Queen flipping chicken tenders and doing the flurry thing, which, by the way, the flurry's fantastic. I feel like I haven't had one in maybe a year.
I believe it was called the sauce and toss.
The sauce and toss? Okay.
Boy, I heard that phrase and thought I was back in Vegas for a second.
I was
there.
really worried.
I was a little nervous.
I don't know. Jonathan Taylor says everything with a smile on his face. So I have no idea if he's going to play or not, and that'll be a big one, obviously, to watch the next couple days, including today at practice.
Yeah, I probably fall a little bit more in the skeptical category.
I probably do as well.
I've stressed the need for multiple days of practice. We'll see if that happens this week for Taylor, and certainly it was a busy Tuesday around the NFL. Yesterday was 3 weeks out from the NFL trade deadline. Nothing says, let's see how NFL ratings work. They're going to have the trade deadline the same day as the election coming up this year.
Are they really?
By the way, I don't know if I'll ask Stephen Holder this today. I'm like 98% confident that Shane Steichen could not name the presidential and vice presidential candidates on this year's ticket.
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Well, let me ask you.
I think there's a chance he'd be like, oh, yeah, Joe Biden against Donald Trump, right?
Well,
wait, Biden's not running?
What happened to Biden the last couple months? What happened to him?
I don't know. Maybe he knows the football coach that is on the VP ticket, but I'm not holding my breath on that one.
Well, that's a great point. I guess Walls was a football coach at one point. I'm sure that's been disputed by the other side at some point. How much coaching that he did?
Gus Bradley or Jeff Saturday? Who you taking there?
That's a great point there. It's a fantastic point. If he knows the presidential nominees, There's no way in hell he knows the vice presidential nominees.
No chance.
There's absolutely no chance at all. Well, if you or Steven or Joel A. Erickson or Nate Atkins wanted to, between the Anthony Richardson discussion and the Sammy Womack discussion, if you wanted to throw a little presidential nominee question in there, I'm sure everybody would get a good laugh at that.
I'm sure Shane would handle that very smoothly like he typically does. Any of those trades stand out to you? Davante Adams, of course, for the Jets. That seems rather inevitable, given the man that is the quarterback and the man that's probably making the decisions for that organization there. Amari Cooper from the Browns to the Bills, and then just a very, discreet, I don't even know if I should mention it, Cam Akers, running back for the Texans, moving on to the Vikings there. So the Colts will see Adams coming up next week. They would not see him this year with the Raiders. They now will see him, and they will see Amari Cooper. Well, with the Bills coming up next month.
Yeah, I think that was my takeaway is this is going to affect the Colts. I think that was my first takeaway is you're going to see both of those guys. There's two things that come to mind. Number one, so Amari Cooper gets moved, and we can dive more into this, but Amari Cooper, the Bills give up a sixth-rounder, a seventh-rounder, potentially a third-rounder as well, so they do give up some capital. But they needed another wide receiver. Josh Allen is actually bottom 5 in the NFL. I mean, he's down there with guys like Jacoby Brissett. And I know it sounds like I'm picking on Jacoby, but and I've done that a couple times on this show, of not completing, of completion percentage to wide receivers. The Bills are that low. I think they went into the season thinking they maybe had enough. And Keon Coleman, the kid out of Florida State, he's been okay, but, he is by no means a guy that's going to get 85% of the snaps. So they really needed somebody. And so, to me, the biggest change in the AFC and the NFL is one of the better teams who consistently is winning the AFC East. They go out there and they get much better with Amari Cooper. They give up pick capital, but they pay him nothing, $800,000 or so. Is basically going to be on that contract. And then the Davante Adams, we could argue whether it's a good thing, a bad thing. The Jets went all in. It's Aaron Rodgers and everything else. But I have been amused over the last, and of course, this broke right after we got off the air. Like last week, the Rob Saleh news broke at 10:07. This broke at 10:08, I believe, yesterday. My takeaway from that is that people laugh at the Jets so much that they could go get Davante Adams. And the takeaway is, it doesn't really matter. By some. By not by everybody. I don't feel that way. But a lot of national people that have reacted have poo-pooed away and made fun of the Davante Adams pickup by the Jets. Again, I'm not one of them, but the Jets are such a bad, such a poorly run franchise that's the first thing people think of is, how is this going to implode in their face?
Let me throw this list of wideouts at you.
Okay.
Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Justin Jefferson, the two guys traded yesterday, Amari Cooper, Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jameson Williams.
It's pretty good.
Those are the wideouts the Colts will face in the next 6 games. That does not include Nico Collins, who, again, he will be on injured reserve when the Colts travel to Houston next week. That is a pretty good list of wideouts, is it not?
Yeah, it is. This directly affects the Colts. When we go into that Jets week, Jalen Jones is going to have Davante Adams. Who's going to have Garrett Wilson? It makes Garrett Wilson much better.
And something I want to get into a little bit more today, and I don't think it's too early to do it, but I think we could start to already tier out the AFC a bit. And I think when you do that exercise, I find myself looking at where the Colts are in terms of the other teams around them and think, boy, if you were going to make me pick, I would say the Colts probably right now would be a playoff team. And I know that might surprise some people, but somebody's got to be the top 7 teams in these playoffs. And I think when you start to tier it out a bit, who else is challenging for a wild card spot? That's what the Jets' thought process was yesterday. At 2-4, does Davante Adams, push them more into that middle tier? And that middle tier has Pittsburgh in it, has the Chargers in it, has the Colts in it, has the Dolphins in it, this Sunday's opponent.
Yep, maybe the Broncos, maybe.
Say that out loud again. The Broncos, Bo Nix, there's been games where he's had, 60 passing yards. And so I find myself looking at it and think, boy, there is an opportunity here, and certainly whether it's this Sunday with Miami, whether it's next month when you face the Jets on Sunday Night Football, those are just absolutely massive games and potentially settling any sort of wild card thought here. And if you want to hold out hope, if Vegas is right this week, the Colts win and the Texans lose. That's what Vegas is saying. The Colts, I think, are about a 3.5-point favorite over Miami. Green Bay is a couple-point favorite over Houston. Houston is at Lambeau.
Boy, that's a good game. Yeah, it's 2.5 right now.
This week. So Vegas is right. The Colts then could go down to Houston next week, and this is obviously a tall order, but remember, Houston will not have Nico Collins for that matchup. If you want to go back to week 1, the Colts will have Josh Downs, a guy that didn't play in that opener. And if the Colts beat the Texans, I mean, record-wise, they are tied. So, that's why I get into the Taylor Buckner injuries for a second. I'm like, will they hold them out one more week? I mean, Miami really, really matters. I don't want to act like
I know
Miami's big, and you could make the argument, well, no, Kevin, the wild card is the more likely route in the division.
That would be the way I would think. The Miami's even bigger than the Houston Texans next
Taylor
week.
And Buckner a little bit,
right?
Or do you sit back and say, hey, if we can win at home against Snoop Huntley and the Texans lose on the road at Lambeau to Jordan Love, now all of a sudden that pre-Halloween matchup in Houston carries a ton of weight. So I don't know. Maybe it took those trades yesterday for me to kind of shift my thinking a little bit of like, okay, where are we at kind of midway point of this season? But I think it's an interesting exercise to look at the AFC right now, and we will do that a little bit later and just exactly where the Colts stand.
Well, how about that? A little Wednesday optimism here on the wake-up call. I like that.
And
I'm good with that.
I guess it's a backhanded compliment. I would say right now the optimism is more rooted in AFC mediocrity in the middle of the conference than it is me sitting here being like, oh man, the Colts have shown me that they are trending up to playing great football. I don't sit here and say that. Now, granted, a return of Buckner and Taylor, you would think whenever that does happen, would allow you to play a little bit better, but certainly the schedule, as I just rattled off those wideouts, it definitely stiffens up.
Yeah, 7:35, we can talk more about that. I think the question for me is, the Colts last year flew under the radar with Gardner Minshew, and boom, it's week 18, and if they win, and if they, if Tyler Goodson makes that catch and they make a couple more plays, they win the South, and they're in the playoffs. Now, this year, I still feel like will be different. I believe the South is going to the Houston Texans, but there is a chance we get to week 17 and 18 of this NFL season, and the Colts are absolutely right there that, maybe they need to win, maybe they need a team or two, maybe they need help, maybe it is win or get in, whatever it may be. So what would be different, I think? That's the question. What would be different? How would they play differently this year than they did last year? But I don't think it's crazy that much like last year that this team flies under the radar. You're going to have Anthony Richardson at quarterback. You're going to have Joe Flacco at quarterback. You're going to have some guys at running back that people aren't paying too much attention to. And lo and behold, you're going to get there to the final couple weeks of the season, and the Colts are going to have a chance for the postseason. So we can dive into that as well. Like KB mentioned, coming up at 8 o'clock, Stephen Holder from ESPN.com. He'll join us. Pat Forde will join us coming up at 9 o'clock. I got to see which game he's going to.
Oh, he's got to be in Bloomington.
Well, I mean, yeah, he probably will be, but I just don't know. I know he was out at the Oregon game, obviously, last week with Ohio State.
He could certainly go to Texas, Georgia.
Well, yeah, there's Texas, Georgia. He's got Miami coming into his backyard there if he wanted to go to that. He's got.
Is it Miami at Louisville?
Yeah, he's got Alabama.
Sneaky game.
I mean, you have Alabama, Tennessee. Yeah, Brown wins one big game a year. This could be it. Last year it was your Notre Dame Fighting Irish, so I'm sure you remember that second half.
How many times are you going to get to Bloomington?
It's a fair point. He might be there. He probably will. So talked to him yesterday for a little bit, so we'll see what he's got popping. Reminder:
Yankees fandom survive a Garrett Cole questionable start.
It was okay. Yeah, it was fun.
Hail.
What kills me about there's not hitting in this series, but the Guardians are boring as hell, aren't they?
Last night looked like kids running the bases.
I mean, it really did.
Little League.
John Sterling said they look like drunks running the bases.
I mean, it was. I would say that is accurate.
Mark Dykton's not here, so I can't make fun of Anthony Rizzo. Mark worships that man. He gave him the World Series a couple years ago. Reminder tonight, speaking of baseball, Game 2 NLCS. Well, the Mets and Dodgers, 7:30 right here on The Fan. Coming up next, Jonathan Taylor's sound from last night, this morning. Some pretty interesting stuff. He talked about his latest update, Anthony Richardson as well, plus your scores and news from overnight. We'll get you a morning check down. It's coming up next. Appreciate you hanging out with us, waking up with us. Wake Up Call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Omaha there. A little audible for us on this Wednesday morning.
What if we did the pop quiz right now?
Colts
boss is not happy.
Colts playoff optimism, as crazy as that might sound, should it be there? We'll hit on that coming up here in a few. Andy Sweeney, I guess a Jonathan Taylor update from last night?
Yeah, at least JT, he doesn't tell you much, but at least he smiles when he does so. So we believe this was taped last night. So yesterday, Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, they were out. Do you know which one it was? Which Dairy Queen?
In Westfield.
Okay. So they're out at a local Westfield Dairy Queen, saucing and tossing and doing it, and that's fantastic. And so we had a little bit of sound from that, but then I think last night, I doubt he went on this early. He went on the NFL Network, did Jonathan Taylor. It aired, I don't know, probably about an hour ago with Tom Pelissero in a show called The Insiders. A little bit better audio quality. So here's Jonathan Taylor. He gives a health update, and obviously the Colts ready for Sunday.
I'm definitely feeling better this week. Ankles are nothing new to me. I've been dealing with them for quite a bit. I'm doing everything in my power to be back out there again this week. The high ankles are always tricky. Especially when, you're playing a high-contact sport like this. But I'm sure I'm up for the challenge. Me and the training staff with Indianapolis, we're going to do everything that we can do to be back out there this week and in the coming weeks going forward, because it's just you want to be out there with your team, helping them make plays. But I have the utmost confidence in our team. You guys saw young guys stepped up. We were able to get a hard road division win, and we got a chance to come back home this week. So we'll feed off the crowd at Lucas Oil. I'm sure they'll be into it, but it won't be easy.
All right, so there's Jonathan Taylor. We'll see. That's basically what he said the last several times he's met with the media. Let me give you one more. Yesterday, Gus Bradley meeting with the media as well as coordinator day. He was asked about DeForest Buckner. Is he going to be back on Sunday?
We're having discussions with that now. Matter of fact, we just talked about it, so we'll have some conversations and see how that goes.
Just a reminder on Buckner, again, the minimum 4-week stay on IR is over. At this point, he is on injured reserve. You can bring him off at any point. Once you bring him off, it starts a 21-day window. Within those 21 days, he can practice, and then you decide over those 3 weeks whether he can play. So, again, it's not a must that you have to bring him off this week. You can, but you could also wait a week and then start that 21-day clock maybe next Wednesday, something like that. So
it was a nasty injury.
If you want to call Taylor's high ankle sprain mild, I think that was the original report. Josh Downs missed 6 weeks for high ankle. DeForest Buckner has now missed 4 weeks for it. So Taylor, this is week 3. So if you're just trying to play out, what that would look like, who knows? So certainly keep an eye on that. Again, Colts back on the practice field later today. 3.5-point favorite here over the Dolphins. A Fox game. You'll get Kevin Kugler, who you hear on a lot of Big Ten stuff. I think he does a really nice job. Daryl Johnson, that is your Fox crew coming up with Laura Ogun for Sunday. All right, last night in Yankee Stadium, it was Garrett Cole, not looking very, very Garrett Cole-like, but it was enough. All hail Aaron Judge, hits his first homer of the postseason. Sloppy base running galore, that probably defines that game. And at the end of it, it is the Yankees up 2-0 in that series. We'll get Game 3 of the NLCS coming up tonight. It is the Mets and Dodgers. That series tied 1-1 as we get back to Shea Stadium.
Yeah, my only piece of analysis on this is, the Guardians have been sloppy the first couple games. Dropping infield pop-ups, just doing dumb stuff,
they look
wild
like the White
pitches.
Sox.
Yeah, they just look like they're not ready. So I expect a different series, you would imagine, at least, when we go back to Cleveland. Quickly, yesterday, it looks like now the Pacers, tell me if I'm wrong, Cole Swider beat out Kendall Brown, basically. Kendall Brown was cut yesterday. Jaleel Okafor waived as well. He did sign an Exhibit 10, whatever the hell that is, an Exhibit 10 deal with the Mad Ant. So, he'll have a chance to come up to the big club. But Cole Swider seemingly beat out Kendall Brown. How about that?
I like Swider in the preseason. He can shoot it. I think he can do a little bit more than that. Seems pretty confident. Kendall Brown, former 5-star recruit, went to Baylor for a year. You take a flyer on him in the middle of round 2, and he's been around for a couple of years. I haven't noticed much. No shock here. I didn't think it was, that big of a battle necessarily. Tomorrow, final preseason game for the Pacers, as Rick Carlisle said to us yesterday. Sounds like they'll treat it a little bit more like a real game. We'll see what that means coming up tomorrow night.
Yeah, it'd be nice for the Pacers not to have a timeout of disgust and not be down 11-2 in the first 90 seconds of the game.
2 of them
For Rick
last
Carlisle.
night or Monday night from Rick Carlisle.
Not good. The last thing I had was I woke up this morning, and I swear to you, I'm not being a hater, even though I sound one. KB, you know what the first thing was that I saw in SportsCenter this morning? Mexico beat us in soccer with our new coach.
Wait, that was above Aaron Rodgers?
Coach P. Coach P said,
well, he doesn't have his guys yet.
Yeah, he doesn't have his. He said, give us patience. That's what he said. I'm like, what is this, Chris Ballard? I have the patience everywhere I go. I gotta have
Coach
patience.
P's been on the job for 8 days. Chris Ballard, 8 years. Come on now. Super Bowl
goodness.
site announced
Atlanta.
yesterday for 2028. It will be the ATL. So New Orleans this year, Santa Clara coming up in 2026, LA in 2027. Atlanta. And speaking of Atlanta,
It's a nice stadium.
That's where Notre Dame will be coming up on Saturday. They've got Georgia Tech in the Falcon Stadium. Again, IU hosting Nebraska, 6.5-point favorite. We'll talk much more about Pat Forde and his feature on Kurt Signetti here coming up at 9 o'clock. Purdue's in the Friday Fox slot. Oregon. How about Oregon playing on the Friday game? Did you see Washington is playing at Indiana next Saturday, and that is a noon kickoff?
Oh, is it? Good.
Welcome to the Big Ten, West Coast schools.
Hey, listen.
Could that not have been the 3:30 slot?
No, listen, you're in the Big Ten now. You play at
9 a.m.
noon.
local time
You're
for
damn
Washington.
right. You're damn right. So
Again, Purdue sticking with Ryan Brown here.
Which they should.
27.5-point underdog. I've got to take Purdue, right?
Yeah, I think I am.
Got to cover 27.5 with a
Can I get 30,
Oregon emotional hangover.
31-10?
Sounds like a dream.
34-13?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll take 34-10.
I'm good with that. I got no problem with that. Reminder, Stephen Holder coming up at 8 o'clock. On the other end, what should the optimism be with the Colts in the AFC playoff picture? Plus, I have a thought on Shane Steichen as well. Appreciate you waking up with us. Wake up call right here. It's a Wednesday on The Fan.
9, reminder, Dallas Clark going into the Colts Ring of Honor coming up on Saturday or on Sunday. So it's a 5-game stretch for the Colts, 4 road games. The 1 home game is this Sunday, and that will be Dallas Clark heading into the Ring of Honor. Andy, he spent his final season in Baltimore. And the man that threw him his last
Oh, boy, that's so true.
31 catches for 343 yards and 3 touchdowns
That's so great.
would be the one and only Joe Flacco.
Well, maybe he'll be out there with him. He's got to give Joe Flacco some sort of a shout-out, doesn't he?
Dallas
I love
Clark
that.
asked Shane Steichen if Flacco can stay out of the locker room during
Right.
halftime so he could
Well,
celebrate the Ring of Honor induction with him.
hopefully Flacco's not having to get ready to play. I think that's the big question on Sunday. I had totally forgot about that, but I mean, when you're a 40-year-old quarterback, that's what happens. You see guys you play with all go into the Ring of Honor at their different places.
That wasn't Flacco's rookie year either. I mean,
no,
that was
it
a
wasn't.
couple of years.
Well, that was in 2013.
Right. So is that right after the Super Bowl year?
I think so.
2012 for
yeah,
Flacco?
I would have to look it up, but I believe you're right. Yeah.
So that will be happening coming up on Sunday, of course, Dallas Clark. I think a fan favorite of a lot of people. The no gloves, that's what always just stood out to me about the one and only Dallas Clark. I know we've had him on this program before, so a shout out to him going into the Ring of Honor coming up on Sunday.
Is he a good interview?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
We
some
had
guys
him
really
on-
are, and then some guys aren't.
Yeah, we had him on. He was training for a triathlon.
Of course he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course
like-
he was.
Dude, just,
Go rest.
you know,
Go rest your body doing anything else.
ease into it. But I think he's enjoying life out in Iowa, and I know he's made, the stops here in Indy for the respective other Ring of Honor
Sure.
ceremonies, and very, very deserving to head up there into the Ring of Honor. So, again, that'll be coming up. I guess it'll kind of be our first public Jim Irsay appearance in a little bit, right?
Well, I was going to ask, is this a wrong question to ask Stephen Holder? Was Jim Irsay at the owners' meetings yesterday?
Yeah. So
Does
that was
anybody
down
know?
in Atlanta.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good question. Obviously, you saw Jerry Jones, maybe some interesting sound from
Yeah,
Jerry
we'll
Jones.
get
We
to
can
it.
play in a little bit. Woody Johnson, the Jets owner, made the rounds yesterday as well. So, no, I think that's a fine question. Because I thought, from a Tennessee standpoint, that's one that he's always kind of circled on the calendar. I feel like Tennessee kind of stands out to him more than the other divisional teams. But I don't feel like we've gotten even like the CBS camera shot of him at any of the games here this season. So, yeah, I think that's a fine question to ask. Thought about this yesterday. You mentioned the NFL owners meetings down there in Atlanta. That was kind of a busy day for the NFL yesterday. Certainly the Devontae Adams trade happened just after we got off the air. The Amari Cooper trade from Cleveland to Buffalo later in the day. And I don't know why, but that sent me down an AFC standings rabbit hole.
Okay.
So here we are in week 7 of the 2024 season. We are slowly getting to the midway point here of the season. And I think we're already starting to see some tears. And frankly, I think it's kind of what we thought at the start of the year. Let's just do this exercise and bear with me for a moment here,
Okay.
Andy. Let's say the division champs are Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, and Houston. I think we all could probably handshake agreement on that for now. Maybe Pittsburgh challenges Baltimore a little bit more in the AFC North. Honestly, I think if you're a Colts fan, you want Pittsburgh to be in the wild card picture because you have the head-to-head tiebreaker over them. I know it seems a little technical right now, but I do think you would rather have Baltimore win that division and then Pittsburgh get into the wild card race there. I think we can cross these teams off, and feel free to stand up for any of them if you'd like. I think we can cross off the Jags. I think we can cross off the Titans.
Yes.
I think we can cross off the Patriots.
Yes.
I know they have 2 wins, but I think we can do the same thing with the Raiders.
I think we can cross off the Raiders. Yeah, they're starting Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. No offense to Aiden. Come on. Yeah.
And the Browns are 1-5.
Yeah.
And they just traded away Cooper.
Yeah,
Can
and
we cross them off?
Yeah, and quite frankly, I mean, you could convince me to get rid of the Bengals. I know they're
so
only.
you're going to cross them off.
Well, I mean, I know they're only a game behind. I get it. I mean, Sunday Night Football, they were as bad as they could be. If the Giants had any pulse, they should have won that game, and the Bengals would be 1-4. So I think they're done. I guess technically, with the talent they have, and they're only a game behind a team like the Colts, they're not dead.
I'm not going to cross them off.
That's
Burrow
fine.
and company. I
Okay,
get
that's
they're in
fine.
a tough division, but I'm not going to do that.
That's fine.
Just yet. So what that leaves is this. If you're saying Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, Texans are going to win their respective divisions and those handful of teams we just put in the basement for the mock drafts for 2025, what that does is it leaves 7 teams for the 3 wildcard spots. These are the 7 teams, Andy. Chargers, Steelers, Jets, Dolphins, Broncos, Bengals, and Colts.
Yep, that's it. Those are the teams.
So when you look at those 7 teams, again, the Chargers, Steelers, Bengals, Broncos, Jets, Dolphins, Colts, and I said pick 3, right now, who would you pick?
Okay, so I would still, even though I don't know what the hell they're doing at quarterback, I would still say Pittsburgh's going to find a way.
And they are 4-2.
Sure,
they're
4-2.
And
Okay,
Pittsburgh finds a way every year.
Every year.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, so I would still say the Steelers, and then I guess maybe just one of the teams. See, to me, the AFC East has confused things a little bit. You know, we thought the Jets would be much better. Guys, they're 2-4, and they have no good wins. Now, I know the no good wins doesn't mean anything. It's not college football. In Miami, I just don't know when they're going to get Tua back, if they're going to get Tua back this season. So even let's say I'm being benevolent, okay? I would give just one of those teams out of the East the nod outside of Buffalo. So pick one. I mean, the Jets or the Dolphins, and obviously the Colts have both of them. And so to me, I've already, in my mind, eliminated the Bengals. So that would leave one spot for teams like the Colts, the Chargers, and the Broncos. That's what I'm looking at if we go by the way that I'm breaking it down.
Where I would disagree with you is I would agree on the Steelers. I would say the Chargers I would give a spot to.
Okay.
I'm not ready to give a spot to the AFC East with the Jets and the Dolphins. Again, when does Tua return?
Which is fair, by the way. The Jets have been a mess.
Mike McDaniel says that he's going to return, but again, when is that?
Right.
Miami also has some really key. I mean, they're down both their pass rushers. Jalen Phillips, they lost for the year a couple weeks back. I don't trust their offensive line. And then the Jets, again, you know, believe in the
Jets always find a way, man.
As you wish. So I look at that and think, man, I mean, 7 teams for 3 spots. The Colts have, I would say, a very decent chance at factoring into that wild card race. Again, I think Cincinnati should not be crossed off. That is a team that I think if they were in any other division, I'd probably pick them. They're just in such a loaded division that I do worry about them having the ability, because they have to climb out of a hole. But, you know, can they do that there? So, again, I just played this out and thought to myself, well, the Colts host the Dolphins. They also play the Jets next month. Weirdly, if you believe in the Broncos, they play the Broncos in December. Now, that's a road game, but they will have opportunities to establish some head-to-head tiebreakers.
Oh, without a doubt.
They already have Pittsburgh in their back pocket.
Doubt. Yep.
So, I don't know why it hit me yesterday. Again, probably because we saw these trades happen. And again, they will play Devontae Adams and the Jets. They will play Amari Cooper and the Bills next month. But when you start to do this exercise and you start to tier teams into division, wild card, and mock draft season, I mean, on paper, I think the Colts have a legit chance to make the playoffs.
Well, here would be my question for you. My question for you would be, how do they not have happen last year to happen this year? How are you not a team that, and we talked about this in segment number 1, that is not talked about very much nationally? Obviously, you know, if Tua comes back, that'll be talked about. I mean, Joe Burrow can win or lose, and he can be the lead on ESPN or ESPN radio. We know that, and then I don't have to tell you the drama that is around the Jets. So the Colts aren't going to be a talked about team, but, you know, how can it be different than you're right on the doorstep of making the postseason, and then you don't make it? Because I think that's the biggest worry of fans. We talk so much about, you know, if Joe Flacco were the starting quarterback and he got you right to the edge of the playoffs and you didn't make it, then what good was the season without Anthony Richardson? And the reason is twofold for me, that this year is different than last year. And we need to, at some point, talk about how the Colts are playing, which we can do here in a second. But to me, it's number 1, the AFC South stinks. I mean, I should say the bottom 2 teams. Tennessee is a bad football team that it will be drafting in the top, 3, 4? whatever number you want to put on it in April's NFL draft. And then, I mean, you look, I'm sorry, but you look at the Jags, they might be worse. I mean, they are true dysfunction. They have more talent than the Titans, but they are true dysfunction. What's going on at quarterback? Doug Peterson. I mean, I don't know if you fire Doug Peterson, does the interim come in and win a couple games? I don't know. So I look at the AFC South as being so weak that there are 2 wins remaining on the Colts schedule because I don't trust those teams, and I say then Jacksonville just beat them. So
I was going to say, I would go there. Like, okay.
So I understand. Just one other thing. The last 5 games, KB, the last 5 games of the season, Patriots, Broncos, who are in the mix, Titans, Giants, and Jags. 4 out of 5 of those teams are teams that will be looking forward to the draft. You have a golden opportunity in the final month of the season while the Bengals and while the AFC East is beating up on each other and the Broncos have to play their schedule in the AFC West. You have a golden opportunity to play 5 teams, all of which we are not considering playoff teams, 4 of which we're considering to be bad teams. I mean, that's one of those. Can you win all 5 of those games? Can you win 4 out of the 5 of those games? To me, that's the biggest difference. Last year, you had Atlanta in there. You had a Texans in there. Those are much more difficult games than the Titans, the Giants, and the Jags.
Atlanta
you would hope.
Stunk last year.
I
mean, they were firing their head
they had
coach.
Tyler Heineke.
That's
I tried to
problem,
make Atlanta sound good.
is last year you didn't take advantage. Taylor Heineke with the Falcons, Jake Browning with the Bengals. Like, you had those games on a platter, and you didn't. And if you want to look at this year so far, Malik Willis with the Packers.
I know. So why should we believe?
So
that's the question.
Which is totally fair. But I guess what I'm laying out is, like, on paper, there is an opportunity. Like, I don't think anyone right now, I mean, you're not carrying a flag for Cincinnati. I don't think many people are carrying a flag for Miami or New York. But one of these teams is going to be in the playoffs. I mean, when you start to look at it. And does Miami have a resurgence if Tua comes back? I mean, that seems like a very lofty thought at this point there. So I would say, to answer your question, what the Colts have to do is they have to handle the NFL gifts that are presented to them. And Sunday's one of them. Sunday, for the second time this season, you will face a quarterback that has been with that football team for less than a month. You already lost to one of those teams this season with Malik Willis. You can't, you've gotten another opportunity.
Yeah, McDaniels can't outsmart Gus Bradley.
You can't afford to lose that, especially in your own building, because, again, you can make the argument, this goes back to a discussion we had in the opening segment, some might say this Sunday matters more than next Sunday, weirdly. Like, if you're more likely to be in the wild card race, then winning against Miami is more important than winning against Houston.
That's how I feel.
For those still holding out hope for the division, which, again, if Vegas is right for this week, the Colts win and the Texans lose. The Texans are at Lambeau. Then next week, you're playing to have the same record as Houston entering November. And you could split the head-to-head tiebreaker with them if you somehow go down there and get an upset. Again, they don't have Nico Collins. You have Josh Downs, who you didn't have in that first matchup. So it's just such a pivotal time in this Colts season. Again, their first practice coming up later today. Again, all signs point to Anthony Richardson, barring a setback, returning to the lineup there. Do we see the Richardson that we saw against Pittsburgh, or is there going to be rust?
I have no idea.
The last time we saw him,
there's going to be rust.
To give the kid credit, last time we saw him was arguably the best stretch of football he's ever played.
I know. I hope he picks up where he left off, but I have no reason to believe that that's going to be the case. And that's not even an Anthony Richardson thing. That's just how I would feel about many players and many, especially young quarterbacks in the NFL. 2 quick things. I want to go back to this conversation. So Devontae Adams moves the needle how much for you then with the Jets? Because the Jets are one of these teams that not only do the Colts face, but they're one of these teams that's going to be fighting for one of those playoff spots. They're not winning the AFC East.
Yeah, I'm not going to write off the Jets. Like, when you look at their last 2 games, it's really come down to fourth quarter drives.
Oh, yeah, I'm not either.
That, Rodgers throws a pick.
Sure.
That Gilmore pick was in the red zone, was it not, in London? And then, on Monday night, they certainly had moments with, mediocre kicking. I know Buffalo had that as well. So, if you're saying, hey, Adams converts an extra first down or 2 for you, that could be the difference. So, I do, I'm not in the camp of it's the freaking Jets. There's no chance in the world. But I do think Rodgers, that O-line protecting him is still a question mark that I have there. So, I think the Jets are in the mix.
Yeah, I do too. What I'm worried about with them, and listen, I just think
they're 2-4.
I
so
know.
It's like,
I think Aaron Rodgers is going to sustain an injury behind that line, and you're going to have Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson be pissed off that Tyrod Taylor is throwing them the football.
Would you bet more on the Dolphins or the Jets?
I would bet more on the Jets just because. I mean, I don't know when Tua is going to play.
Mike McDaniel says he will play at some point. Again, cannot play this Sunday against the Colts, but could return as early as next week.
Yeah, plus, I as much as I like Tyreek Hill, I think he's a little bit of a front runner. I think they're a little bit of a front-running team. I think the weather's getting cold. They're going to go on the road. I'm not worried about Miami as much then. So I don't believe in the Jets. I think this is going to blow up in their face like some of the haters do. But they do have a good amount of talent, probably the best talent they've had in a while. We have a couple minutes here. Can I throw something your way that I thought of yesterday? So you were daydreaming, was Kevin Bowen, about the AFC, right? You were doing a little daydream on a Tuesday about the AFC.
Sounds like a lowly life, but yeah.
It really does. Well, I was daydreaming about Shane Steichen, and I thought for him, we've all been down
Shane know this?
Well, he doesn't. Now he will if he's listening. Of course, he's been at the office for 4 hours drawing up plays. With the Gardner Minshew stuff last year and the uncertainty and Joe Flacco and kind of reading body language that, I don't think anyone was too happy that they didn't get to play AR last week in Nashville. I wonder how much do we know? This might be a bigger picture that we can talk about this week. How much do we know about Shane Steichen? Like, he's never consistently been able to use his offensive playbook here in Indianapolis. How frustrating do you think that is for Shane Steichen? I mean, he's had Gardner Minshew and Joe Flacco have been his quarterback, and he took the job thinking it was going to be Anthony Richardson and the style that he played with Jalen Hurts, and he's had, at least one older quarterback, not a mobile quarterback, a limited quarterback in some respects with Gardner Minshew and Joe Flacco, and, he's had some low-scoring games, and, I think, I wasn't here, you obviously were. When you envisioned Shane Steichen taking over, you envisioned a dynamic offense. And it's almost like some of these games, they've been in survival mode to get these wins. I don't know why yesterday I just thought of it with all the Anthony Richardson stuff and Jonathan Taylor out of the Dairy Queen, but I'm thinking, man, my man Shane Steichen, is he ever going to get to actually use the playbook that you hired him to use?
Yeah, especially because, I think he was such a pivotal voice in taking Richardson fourth overall.
Sure he was.
This is by no means Brian Callahan walking in there and Will Levis is his quarterback.
Right.
No. He was a huge part of that decision-making process. Again, I think Shane deserves a lot of credit. I mean, think about how many 20-point games they had last season with Gardner Minshew and with Jonathan Taylor very in and out of the lineup throughout last season. So, again, as an offensive mind, I think there's plenty of credit that needs to go Shane's way on that end. But, yeah, I mean, that's got to be a huge bummer to him. He probably feels like there is a bit of a handcuff to him. If you think back to even his days with Justin Herbert, remember, that was Herbert's rookie season. Shane calling the plays for the Chargers there, and that was the weird Tyrod Taylor gets injected wrong.
Yeah.
And next thing you know,
he had a punctured lung.
They've got to go to Herbert.
Yeah.
And what does Herbert do? He's NFL Rookie of the Year and has the most touchdown passes in rookie history. And, again, the Herbert offense probably looks a little different than what, he ran in Philly or certainly what he has run here. So add that to the reasons why you need to see Anthony Richardson out there Sunday.
No kidding. There's 100 of them. That's just one of them.
So the quarter plus that Richardson played against Pittsburgh, where he looked great, if you want to boil it down to one quarter plus, was that him showing growth? Was that him taking the issues against Green Bay and Chicago and saying, hey, I'm going to improve on the fundamental aspects that I'm lacking? Was that, shoulder surgery rust in September, and now he's making strides as the season moves along? Or was that simply one quarter of good football?
Right. I guess we'll find out.
This is why we have to see him.
Yeah, because I don't know the answer. I don't know.
Regression?
I know.
What would the next three quarters have looked like? All of those things are why we just have to see him, and it does sound like we will on Sunday.
It's just crazy. If you think the fourth quarter in that Jacksonville game, if that doesn't play out the way that it did in Flacco hitting those long passes, I mean, their leading passer could be like 212 yards week one with Anthony Richardson. I mean, Shane Steichen and offense and everything else. All right, coming up on the other side, Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, who's going to play, who's not, plus a matchup with Miami on Sunday. We'll talk about that and more. Stephen Holder from ESPN.com. He joins us next on this Wednesday on The Fan.
Corbin Lingenfelter re-entry music. I don't know if there's a bigger difference in the world than Mark Dykton's re-entry music versus Corbin Lingenfelter.
It's like going from the wing tee offense in college football to the air raid.
So
it's like
true.
when Mike Leach would take over a football program, he'd go get his quarterback and throw the ball 73 times in a game. That's exactly what it is.
Ken Niumatalolo at Navy versus Mike Leach at Texas
Boy,
Tech.
you nailed that name, too.
Well,
that's a good job by you.
when he's beating
I'm
your
impressed.
program,
Well,
you certainly hear that name ingrained into your brain.
That was Miley Cyrus, right? Is that right,
No,
Corbin?
That was Taylor Swift.
Oh, was that Taylor?
Swift.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Well, I thought it might be. Did you see they tore down the Colts off the Marriott?
I
and
did
it's
see that.
It's T Swift. They're putting her up. So how
Yeah,
about that?
yeah,
Off
yeah.
goes Jonathan Taylor. Enough with a high ankle sprain.
Trying to get Stephen Holder here.
Well, our phones are down.
Yeah, he just
Yeah.
texted me. Corbin, did you send him the number?
He's probably thinking, who the hell is this other guy texting me this early in the morning?
You know, one thing that's been weird, Colts topic, we have not had to touch for the last month.
What's that?
In the last month, Matt Gay has kicked one field goal of longer than 40 yards.
I know. And, I mean, listen, he would have had a chance in, what was it, the early fourth or late third when Steichen went for it twice? But, Steichen went for it. I think he went for it at the 24-yard line, so we would have seen a 41-yard field goal, I believe, from Matt Gay.
Isn't it kind of weird the Colts haven't encountered like a 4th and 6 from the 29-yard line, though?
It is so odd. He hasn't been in conversation for a month. You're right. Not
again,
at all. I haven't mentioned
It's not like, you bring up a 4th and 3, but it's not like that he's been in any of those situations. Do we have Stephen? All right, let's head to the Payless Liquors hotline right now. Stephen Holder from ESPN joins us. Stephen, good Wednesday morning to you.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We are well. Thank you, as always, for the time. I guess let's start here. Why do you think Shane Steichen publicly said Anthony Richardson's going to start on Sunday so early in the week? That seems very un-Shane Steichen-like.
Oh, it is, for sure. I think it's a little bit of an acknowledgement that he's maybe made a bit of a mess, the way he's handled this situation. I don't know that he intentionally made a mess, but in trying to be, sort of coy and kind of mysterious the way he normally is about all injuries, I think it opened the door to questions, and I just don't know that it's worth the trouble, frankly. So that's my theory, at least, right? Because he certainly doesn't usually just offer up the details the way he did, or his intentions, I guess, and he did do that here. So I think it has something to do with that, which also leads me to believe that their rationale or the public explanation of why they started Joe Flacco on Sunday is probably mostly true. And obviously in doing so, that just added to the questions. So this maybe is an attempt to rectify that. That's what I surmise, at least.
Stephen Holder with us from ESPN.com. I guess as a follow-up to that is the last week, because I don't know, this is just me. I viewed last Sunday as a little bit different of a situation than what we have seen with Anthony Richardson. Is that true in your mind, or, is what we're dealing with AR just part of the, hey, guys, you got to have patience with a young quarterback who is being injured?
Well, you mean it from the perspective of, were they trying to protect him, or was it just about the injury, or just to be clear?
Yeah, like to me, finding out 90 minutes before the game that he wasn't going to play, that was a different situation. Them sitting him like that, and then you mentioned, kind of how they talked about it. That was different than some of the other injury stuff I felt like that we had dealt with Anthony Richardson. I felt like for maybe the first time, there's some anger within the fan base. Hey, why isn't this guy playing? Is he ever going to play? Are you coddling him? Are you babying him? Is it that? Or is it, hey, guys, if you're going to have patience, that means we got to wait another week for him to be 100%?
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I do think the tenor of the questions and the reaction was different from the fan base. That's true. And I think it's because we did expect Anthony to play. That's part of it. And so that just bolsters why Shane Steichen handled it differently this week, because he wanted to be completely clear. He was not clear last week. And I was under the impression he was going to play. And there were lots of signs pointing to him playing. We saw him move around pretty well. He looked pretty good. We thought that was a pretty strong indication he was going to play. So I guess you're right. I would say you're right. But I would say this to maybe allay people's concerns. And I spoke to everybody involved here. I spoke to, obviously, Shane Steichen has spoken multiple times. I checked in with Chris Ballard on this. I checked in with Anthony's camp and Anthony himself as well. And I got the same story from all of them. So I think that maybe bodes well for things being okay on their end. What the public perception is and what the public reaction is completely different and maybe not as important. But Anthony admitted to me, he said, look, yeah, I am still healing. It's not completely healed. Could he have played? Probably, yes. And if they had a different quarterback situation, would he have played? I think almost certainly, yes. And when I say that, I mean if Joe Flacco's not your backup. But it was a little bit of a luxury. He's still dealing with the injury to a degree. He's had a lot of injuries. And so I think all of that combined led them to the outcome, which is, all right, look, let's just give him one more week. Agree or disagree, I understand the thinking.
And Stephen Holder's with us here from ESPN. Stephen, last one on the Richardson front from me. The last time we did see him, he was really good, albeit it was a quarter and a series against Pittsburgh. Again, a very good defense. On top of that, do you think there was anything tangible there of like bad performances against Green Bay and Chicago? Fundamentally, he had changed some stuff footwork-wise. Like, am I overreading it? Did you think there was anything specifically there in that quarter of work where it's like, hey, maybe this was a real growth moment instead of just a, flash in the pan, I guess, like maybe the opener against Houston followed up by kind of two clunkers?
So I want to believe that it is, that it was a shift. I think if it was, then I think, he's got an opportunity to really accomplish something this season. Because I never felt he was that far away. He's making the reads for the most part. He's had a couple of bad ones that maybe got him picked off, and then he's missed some throws that ended up being interceptions. But for the most part, he's making the reads. He's making the right decision, generally speaking. So it really just boils down to, like, all right, settle down and do what you know how to do. And he was not doing that. And that was the first time I saw him really settle in and take his time and focus on the technique and things like that. So, if that's what we're talking about, if he's capable of it, and I think he is, if he's capable of it, he's just got to do it, right? And so that was the first time we saw him consistently do it, albeit for one quarter, so not enough. So the answer to your question is TBD. We'll find out, I presume, on Sunday. But it was certainly a huge, huge step in the right direction. But it's up to him, I think, to maintain it. And to when things break down and maybe the pocket isn't just perfect or you have to rush to get the ball off, maybe in those circumstances he's got to maintain that proper footwork and technique as well under those circumstances.
Stephen Holder joining us here. He's from ESPN.com. He joins us on the Payless Liquors hotline on this Wednesday on The Fan. Stephen, Michael Pittman Jr. made a couple big plays, but not only that, boy, he's a tough SOB, toughing out that back injury from maybe on the IR to playing on Sunday, and it's going to be a week-to-week thing. What is your read of the Michael Pittman Jr. Conversation situation with not going on IR and then obviously playing, and now we'll see week-to-week how he feels?
I think your summary is pretty accurate. That's the first reaction is, like, this guy is a different level of tough. And I think that's not surprising. I watched his father play. In fact, covered his father for a couple of seasons, my first couple of seasons in the NFL. And so he has good genes from that perspective. And, Junior laid out a few of the injuries his father played with when he was a few of the injuries that he played through when he was a player. And it was just as impressive, frankly. So, that's kind of what he's cut from. It's kind of where he comes from. So I guess from that perspective, maybe it's not surprising. But also just from what we know of Michael Pittman, it's not Junior, that is. It was not surprising. But I think the thing that needs to be remembered here is that, as he said, I'm not out of the woods. And he's like, look, at any point, this thing could go the other way, and I might not be able to continue playing through it. So I think that's something we have to remember, that this is a week-to-week thing. He said that very specifically. It's very much week-to-week, and it's certainly a pain tolerance issue, and whether he can get out there and move fluidly and be able to help the team. So it's not over yet. It'll be very much a week-to-week thing that we'll just have to keep checking on, and he'll have to keep pushing through.
Stephen Holder, you can find his work on ESPN.com. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Colts get back to practice here coming up later today. Stephen, a question I was asking Andy earlier in the week. What good happened Sunday that you feel like can translate moving forward? Unquestionably, they beat a bad opponent. Sometimes that's life in the NFL. Bad opponents get presented to you. It's your job not to be as bad as them. I think the Colts were that on Sunday. But what can you take individually, unit-wise? What good are you curious about if that can now move forward as the schedule certainly gets tougher in November?
Well, maybe a couple things. I would say, look, they came through with clutch plays. In fact, Michael Pittman probably made the two biggest ones, in fact. So a couple clutch plays from him, one or two on defense, just to kind of slam the door. And, again, we can take the opponent into account. We have to take the opponent into account. But, again, they had a terrible opponent the week before, and they fumbled that one. So, look, I think given all the injuries, well, let me back up. They're a hard team to read, right? They're 3-3. They are absolutely, positively a mediocre team, okay? That is true. But I do think, given everything that's happened, given the disappointment of the defense, given all of the injuries to their absolute best players, okay, their most important players, they have all been hurt. Given all of that, I think 3-3, you got to look at it half glass full. I am not promising you that this upcoming 5-game stretch is going to go well. In fact, I think you should buckle up, frankly. But that being said, I think we got to give them at least a little bit of credit. I'm not saying throw them a parade. They haven't earned that. But 3-3 in an AFC that, frankly, is pretty wide open, outside of the two or three elite teams. I mean, there are a lot of teams that have had similar opportunities and have dropped the ball. So they're 3-3. They're getting some guys back, and it's up to them to show us what and who they are, and that will be determined very soon.
Stephen Holder with Stephen. Any read Jonathan Taylor's injury situation, DeForest Buckner's injury situation? Anything?
Not a ton, except if DeForest Buckner gets back before Jonathan Taylor, I'd be very disappointed. I mean, my God. So I think it's definitely a little frustrating, I imagine, as a fan, trying to kind of forecast what's going to happen with Jonathan Taylor. I mean, I thought he was close, and it turns out he's still not even seen the practice field. So that was clearly not true. What I'd say is, on the other hand, I also kind of understand to a degree because, for the last couple of years, this ankle has been problematic. So I get that. I think maybe that's the reality that he's dealing with here. I hope that's not the reality going forward, like for the rest of his career. But it certainly has been for quite some time now, and I guess that's just where we are with this ankle of Jonathan Taylor's. Buckner, I would say if he's close, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets out there on a limited basis this week and at least tries to push it in practice to see what he can do. And playing on this particular Sunday, maybe a long shot, but I do think once you see him get a couple of practices in, I think at that point he's probably a week away. So you got to feel good about that. He is truly, truly a game changer.
And he's a freak. I mean, in terms of getting back from injuries and playing
God.
through
He's a
stuff.
cyborg.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
He is. He's Gumby. That's 6'8" and 300 pounds. Steven, are you making the trek down 65 by chance Saturday morning to watch the Hurricanes in Louisville?
As a matter of fact, I am.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Look at you. Good for you.
See, Steven, I'm nervous. Jeff Brom gets one big win a year. He did it at Purdue. He's done it at Louisville. I'm worried for you. This might be the one. I'm worried.
Hey, listen, I'm not taking them lightly. I am not. And first of all, I mean, Miami has tried to lose their last couple of games. Okay?
Yep.
Certainly have.
They really have tried. And I don't feel terrible because have you looked at college football today? I mean, no one is safe, and the parity is at an all-time high. So that I feel fine about it. All I'm saying is, look, don't sleep on these guys. I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, I would say that is true. Well, enjoy that. Safe travels down there, and we'll see you later today at Colts practice. Thank you as always, sir.
All right, guys. Talk soon.
Stephen Holder, ESPN, right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. We mentioned the month of November. If you rank the 32 teams in the league, Andy, like 1 to 32, based off record, obviously you have some teams tied in there. Starting next week, you'll play the team with the third best record, the first best record, the 8th best record, the 26th best record, and the 5th best record upcoming. That would be in order: Houston, the undefeated Vikings, Buffalo, the Jets, which I don't think many would consider them the 26th worst team, just based off their trade for Devontae Adams, and then the Lions. So schedule toughens up big time.
Well, I remember last week you guys laughed at me when I looked forward, and I said by the time they get to New England in December, if they can be 6-6, they have a great chance of making the postseason. Because then they have the 5 games against 4 out of the 5 teams are going to be way out of playoff contention. Denver would be the only one. And I got to be honest, Denver, I don't know where they're going to be in 6 weeks.
So I guess that would mean
no idea.
2-3 stretch.
It would.
Off of the one I just listed. That's at Houston, at Minnesota, home to Buffalo, at New York, home to Detroit. And that is a win on Sunday.
Yes,
I mean,
it would have to be a win on Sunday. The other thing I wanted to bring up before we get to a morning check down here to add to this conversation, and I was looking at it last night. It's funny. We had our conversation on the AFC last segment, and I looked down at my notes, and I'm like, I can't believe I forgot about this. So, Warren Sharp, who is numbers guy in the NFL. I like his stuff a pretty good amount.
Analytics nerd.
He's an analytics guy, whether you like that or not, that's fine, whatever. So he rates and has a rating system for the easiest schedule remaining, the hardest schedule remaining. For instance, now with what is left after, 6-7 weeks, the Packers, Rams, Lions, Vikings, and Browns have the hardest remaining schedules. The Eagles, Saints, Ravens, Bengals, and Chiefs have the easiest remaining schedule. The Colts are quite literally, it's like the Texans, Bucks, I think Panthers and Colts are all just stuck there right at the midline where they have very average I guess I'm trying to think. Hardest schedule, easiest schedule. So they're right in the middle. But he then breaks it down even further. What NFL offenses have the hardest remaining schedule? So just talking about the offense. So let's talk about the Colts and Anthony Richardson. The Colts are number 1 on that list. According to Warren Sharp, the Colts have the offense of the Colts, Shane Steichen's offense with Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco, has the hardest remaining schedule. They're number 1. Bengals, Chiefs, Cardinals, Patriots round out the top 5. So I just found that to be interesting. I didn't know what the numbers were going to show, and I was scrolling down, and there's a lot of things on the Colts that the Colts aren't a part of it. Now, on the flip side, what makes them pretty even with their schedule, which NFL defense has the easiest remaining schedule? The Colts are 4th on that list. Bengals, Chiefs, Ravens, Colts, and Jags. So that's why it's kind of even. So this would be a chance for Gus Bradley's defense to do something. I know many people believe that's not going to happen. I am one of them. But the offense for the Colts is going to be up against the hardest schedule facing those good of defenses in the NFL the rest of the way. I found that to be at least a little bit interesting.
Yeah, that is, especially because, and I'll do it again, you look at the wideouts you face in the next 6 games.
I know.
Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Justin Jefferson, Amari Cooper, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Amon St. Brown, Jameson Williams. I'd like for a lot of those guys to be on my fantasy team.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah. Well, a couple of them are on mine, and I'm still 2-4, so don't worry about it.
And you're catching a break with no Nico Collins.
Sure you are. He's great.
He's on injured reserve. The Colts will be at Houston coming up next week. All right, there will be another Colts legend in the building coming up on Sunday. I'll share that, maybe a little tongue-in-cheek, coming up here in a few. Before that, let's go ahead and check it down.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Marian University Football, pursuing another NAIA championship this season. Don't miss the on-campus action at Ascension St. Vincent Field.
All right, as always, we'll lead with the Colts. I have something, Jonathan Taylor, I want to get to you, plus Anthony Richardson as well. Let's start with JT. He and Anthony were out yesterday at a Westfield Dairy Queen doing the thing, so that was a lot of fun. I know some media was out there. And then Jonathan Taylor, I believe he taped that later on in the night, was on NFL Insiders on the NFL Network with Tom Pelissero, and he gave it a health update. So here's a Jonathan Taylor health update. Go ahead.
I'm definitely feeling better this week. Ankles are nothing new to me. I've been dealing with them for quite a bit. I'm doing everything in my power to be back out there again this week. The high ankles are always tricky, especially when, you're playing a high contact sport like this. But I'm sure I'm up for the challenge. Me and the training staff with Indianapolis, we're going to do everything that we can do to be back out there this week and in the coming weeks going forward, because it's just you want to be out there with your team, helping them make plays. But I have the utmost confidence in our team. You guys saw young guys stepped up. We were able to get a hard road division win. And we got a chance to come back home this week. So we'll feed off the crowd at Lucas Oil. I'm sure they'll be into it, but it won't be easy.
All right, again, there's Jonathan Taylor on the NFL Network. Now, yesterday, meeting with the media out at that Dairy Queen. It's kind of an odd sentence to say. Here's Anthony Richardson. He was asked how close he was to playing last week against the Titans.
There's concerns about me missing games. Of course, people are always worried about that. I think they made a decision, try not to prolong that, anymore, and just make sure I was, 100% and complete. I feel like I could have went out there and competed, but the organization, the franchise, feel like it was best for me to sit that week and let Joe do his thing. So, I listen and I'm doing anything for the team.
So along with Taylor, along with Buckner, again, Ryan Kelly exited Sunday with a calf injury. So are we looking at Tanner Bortolini get another start at center? And that'll be something to watch as the Colts hit the practice field later today. All right, last night in Yankee Stadium, certainly not typical Garrett Cole, and frankly, I thought some pretty elementary baseball fundamentals in that one there. But the Yankees beat the Guardians' Aaron Judge yard for the first time this postseason. They are up 2-0 in that series. The NLCS will now shift to the Big Apple. That series is tied at 1. We'll see if the Mets can take the lead. They've got a chance. Again, this is a 2-3-2 format. If they can win all three, finish off the Dodgers and not go back to L.A. So
It's a big game tonight.
If that'll happen. Game 3, again, this is the solo game of the night. We'll get back to both these teams, or both series, I should say, coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, quick Pacers news. Cole Swider, he beats out Kendall Brown for the final spot on the roster. As Kendall Brown waived yesterday, he can be picked up with another team. Jaleel Okafor also waived yesterday, but he did sign an Exhibit 10 deal with the Mad Ants, so I know people know the name Jaleel Okafor there at Duke. So the Pacers rounding out, with a week and a half to go, rounding everything out here.
And we'll see about Paul George for the Pacers home opener. Again, the Pacers opener, let's start there. They open up the regular season next Wednesday, so a week from tonight in Detroit. They will play New York Friday in Madison Square Garden. That's an ESPN game. The home opener for the Pacers is a week from Sunday. That is a 3:30 tip against the 76ers. The announcement yesterday, Paul George going to be reevaluated in a week with a bone bruise in the right, I think it's the right knee for him. So the Pacers play them in 11 days. So I would say very much up in the air whether Paul George will play in that game. And probably bigger picture, that's an age-old question for the 76ers, and I would say the Bucks this year, they fall into that category. When healthy, you probably like their starting 5. The issue is when healthy over 82 nights.
Who will have more starters, the most time missed by starters in the NBA?
I mean, think back to the Sixers
Will
last
be the
year.
Sixers, right, with him and Embiid?
I mean, the Sixers were in the play-in last year.
Oh, sure, it's
because
unbelievable.
of injuries. So already starting there for Philly. Again, Pacers season started here in a week. Their preseason finale coming up tomorrow night. That will be against Charlotte inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Again, you miss any of Stephen Holder, you can check it out. Podcast Center, 1075thefan.com. Pat Forde, SI.com. He'll join us coming up at 9 o'clock. But on the other side, from the mind of Mark Dykton to the mind of Corbin Lingenfelter, I got to know. We can dive into that. Plus, KB has, what'd you say, a Colts luminary who's going to be in the building? I know you're being sarcastic
Good
here.
way to describe it.
Okay, yeah. We'll tell you who that is next. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on this Hump Day Wednesday, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Talking some IU football with Pat Forde coming up at 9 o'clock. We'll get to an I Gotta Know here with Corbin Lingenfelter filling in for Mark Dykton. Mark totally half-assed it last week.
Boy, you think so?
And nothing said I didn't prepare at all, or I didn't do, I didn't bring in my homework like Mark Dykton be like, yeah, I gotta know. Let's predict the Colts schedule the rest of the way.
Yeah, Corbin, he had us go win-loss the rest of the way. However, how many games did they have? I forget even. They were 2-3. So yeah,
Mark, you've been gifted with this great brain, great personality.
12
and
games.
You just half-ass it like that with us. Colts legend in the building coming up on Sunday. No, not just Dallas Clark into the Ring of Honor. He was on the Miami Dolphins coaching staff.
Oh, no, I have no idea who's on the Miami Dolphins coaching staff. Tell me.
The man that Jeff Saturday, I believe after multiple people told him no.
Oh, boy.
The man that Jeff Saturday handpicked to call plays for him. Do you remember the play caller
No,
for the
I
Colts
don't.
to end the 2022 season?
I don't. Who was it? Come on.
Parks Frazier.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You remember Parks?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. 1,000%.
Nicer human beings I've ever come across in my life.
Absolutely, yeah.
I didn't know he was assistant.
I didn't know he was on the Dolphins. Good for him. I know he spent time in Carolina, right?
Mike McDaniels. Yes, followed Frank Reich there, and now is with Mike McDaniels in Miami there.
Good for him.
Colts legend, Parks Frazier. How about that?
He's 32 years old. That's what he is. Good for him.
Calling plays in the NFL at what, 29,
He's
30 years old?
28, 29 years old. I do remember from that. I mean, you guys were much closer than I was. Sports Center was doing a thing. Who's Parks Frazier? And I got to think, good for this guy. He's like 28 calling plays. He doesn't have a shot in hell. The Colts were obviously in a very bad spot that season. But he got his chance. I don't know. He's stuck in the NFL. Mike McDaniels is a well-respected offensive mind. I know right now it looks as bad as it can look. He doesn't have a quarterback, but I guess that's not a bad guy to learn from, is it? Come on.
Again, Miami's skill group kind of worries me for
Well,
Sunday.
they should.
And I know Gus Bradley said that Sunday was the Colts' best tackling game of the season. I just think this is a little different animal with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And again, we'll see about Devin Achane coming back from the concussion, but he was in a red jersey on Monday. We'll get the first official injury report of the week, but I get it is Snoop Huntley, but my worry level is higher than it was last week. I laughed off the Titans.
I agree.
I'm not laughing off the Dolphins to that extent. I don't think they're very good with Snoop Huntley by any means. I mean, again, they're 32nd in the league in points scored, but I don't think it's just an outright W like I felt last week.
Yeah, before we get to I Gotta Know, I think this is a conversation for tomorrow and Friday as we, really turn the page to the Dolphins. I'm worried that Huntley got a week off. He got the bye week. Come on, they scored 15 points against the Patriots a couple weeks ago. So he gets a bye week. What kind of progress could be made at the quarterback position there? That's number one. And then number two, I think if I'm them, they have a couple good running backs. Mostert last year, he was like the best running back in the NFL. That dude had like 21 it was something. He had over 20 touchdowns last year, Raheem Mostert did. So he's back. Achane is a really good player as well. You combine those two guys. Do they do some gadget plays where you get Tyreek Hill on some sweeps or some easy out plays and you make Jalen Jones and Sammy, almost call him Sammy Watkins, help me, his Womack, you make him make some tackles in space there. So I'm with you. I would be terrified of this offense and what Gus Bradley would do if Tua were in, but he's not. And to me, that evens things up a little bit. But the weapons are there, man.
Scares me a little bit more than last week's skill group.
Last week you had Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard.
Right.
Yeah.
So, a little different on that end. All right, Corbin Lingenfelter, I got to know time.
He's got questions. How about a game? They've got answers. Hey, I'm more of a cornhole man myself. Sports, music, movies, high fashion. That Hansel's so hot right now. And everything in between. It's time to get a glimpse into the mind of Mark Dykton. Stop it, you're scaring me. It's time for I Gotta Know. Okay, you two punks, I want a good clean fight. Let's get it on.
Alrighty, I'm going to do my best Mark Dykton impression here.
Oh, boy.
KB and Andy, I got to know who finishes with a better final ranking this season. IU football or IU basketball?
I like it. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. Do you have your answer? Because I think I have mine.
So walk me through this. IU is preseason ranked 17, right? College basketball AP poll right now. What are they? Football? Are they 18? Are they higher than that?
Well, I mean, there's 19 different polls, but basically they're right around. Where are they? Right, 18 and 16 in the respective polls. So basically the exact same as the basketball in the same area. I'm going football.
What do you think? You think football's going 11-1?
I think football has a better chance looking at their schedule. College basketball, there's just so many good teams.
If they go 10-2, they'd be unranked, right? I mean, if they're 18th right now, you throw 2 losses onto that?
Perhaps. I mean, there would be a chance. I mean, if nothing else, they would be in the late 20s, right? I mean, they'd be 23, 24, 25, something like that.
We're about to get into season where SEC fans are going to look at the IU football schedule.
And they're going to kill them.
And they are just going to try and rake it over the Colts.
Ole Miss fans are going to assault Signetti's schedule.
You're
exactly right.
I mean, that's going to be an hour on Feinbaum one of these days.
It might be 3 hours. He'll just take calls.
The 10-2 SEC resume versus the 11-1 Indiana resume.
I love Feinbaum will take a call for 6 minutes from a guy from Alabama. I'm like, what if we did that here? What if a guy from Carmel called and we took him for 6 minutes on the air? Complaining.
Probably wouldn't go over.
I'm gonna go with football just because I got to see it with Woody. And there's
I'll go
more
basketball.
Okay, it's fine.
I'll say, and I'm looking at like a late. I think the basketball AP poll preseason is a fair assessment. I'll look at late teens for that, and I will say football will be hovering around, 25-ish.
Okay, that's fair. All right, what you got next,
Corbin?
Corbin?
Crazy. I mean, it gets back to the start of the show. I said it to you yesterday. I walked out of the studio, shook my head, and could not believe we had a legitimate conversation on an IU football-centric guest we needed to have on the show.
We got one. Yeah, it makes no sense
Pat Forde
at all.
joined us in a few, wrote a great piece on Kurt Signetti.
Alrighty. I got to know, if you had your choice for the Colts, would you want Davante Adams or the Amari Cooper trade?
Ooh. Now, we're taking into account, like, the money and the draft picks and everything else. To me, I would want Amari Cooper just because I'm not giving up as much. Davante Adams, I mean, like, what are the Jets going to do? Are they going to pay all that money and then
Sounded like it, right?
and then extend him once he gets there after the season, not having a quarterback? I don't know. You got to deal with all that. To me, give me Amari Cooper, and it's easy for me to say that because Buffalo's the better football team.
Boy, I really like Davante Adams. Amari Cooper's also 30 years old.
Yeah, Amari Cooper
Man, where did the time go?
His numbers this year, he is actually one of the lower rated by numbers wide receiver. But man, you can't use any, to me, analytics on Amari Cooper. He's playing on a terrible team with, come on, the worst quarterback right now in the NFL, and Deshaun Watson. Give me Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I might go Adams. I mean, sure, the Colts have got plenty of cap space to eat that up. I know it's a little bit older on that end. If you're making a short, I don't know. If the thought is you're making this, hey, win now move, and
it's a 1 year thing.
It's a 9-game rental or 10-game rental, something like that. If you just put it in a vacuum, I'd probably say Adams over Cooper just for the 2024 season here.
All right, number 3.
Boy, I don't know. I am torn on that one.
It's a tough one. Both are good players.
Alrighty, I got to know, if the college football playoffs started today, who just missed the final cut at that 12th? Who's
Notre
this
Dame.
year's Florida State?
Oh, what the hell?
Notre Dame.
Stop that.
Well, Notre Dame's
They got a 10-point win over a top 15 team on the road in Texas A&M.
You talk about Indiana and Signetti being assaulted by SEC fans. Get ready, Notre
Army
Dame
and Navy
fans.
are undefeated.
I know. You think
Stop that.
You think Ole Miss fans give a damn about Army and Navy?
Well, if they want to respect our country, they will.
I would say Notre
Those
Dame
are ranked Army and Navy teams, by the way.
I would say Notre Dame is going to be close to that list. That's a great question. Otherwise, I think you're looking at Kansas State, Ole Miss, and Missouri are going to be teams that might be sweating things out. Missouri, to me, with their loss, they might be out. They could be maybe 11-1 and not make it.
Okay. Where did Missouri lose? They got throttled at Texas A&M.
Yes,
what
they
did
did.
Notre Dame do at Texas A&M?
They won the damn game.
So that is no debate.
No, it's a great win. It's a great win.
Over under 4.5 SEC teams in the 12-team playoff.
I'm going to say 4 is the number. I'll take under. And Sankey's going to complain about it.
Can you imagine they get 5 of the 12 spots?
They're going to get 4, and they're going to complain about who didn't get in. I can already tell you.
Yeah, I mean, you got to probably put. I can't see the Big 12 getting a second team in. So right now it would be like a BYU or an Iowa State. And that's what we're about to get into. Because what are we, a couple weeks away from our first playoff rankings here? Again, this is what is going to be so fascinating about the playoff debate is the resumes you get of the one loss, the second place one loss Big 12 team, if there is a second place one loss ACC team. Again, an Indiana team that just based off brand recognition, people are going to discredit, and their schedule is not certainly very good this season. How is that 11-1 potential resume going to look against the two-loss SEC team?
It's fascinating, but it's also, I worry, and we'll talk with Pat about this, the Big Ten and SEC, their alignment in Sankey's words about the college football playoff. I mean, it's almost like he's holding it over their heads. I'll give you another team. Sorry to Jason Hammer, Tennessee. They already got a loss to Arkansas. That's a bad loss. They have a close win on national TV. If you watch them against Florida, you didn't feel better about it. They have Alabama this weekend. They still have on the road at Georgia, and they do have on the road at Vanderbilt, who's better. So if they lose one more, they're going to be 10-2. They won't be in the SEC championship game. Will they get the nod? Maybe with some close wins over average teams. I do not know. We have time for one more, Corbin. Just one more, okay? So go ahead. Pick whichever one's best.
Alrighty, I got to know. If you could add one former Colt still playing in the NFL or XFL to this current roster, who would it be?
God, the XFL. Who's in the XFL?
Dear Lord.
Oh, my goodness. Who are
Deion
some
Kane in the XFL?
Who are some former Colts? Come on, help me here.
Gosh, see, that's the thing is I don't feel like the Colts have had a lot of how about Danico Autry?
Okay.
Coming up here in a couple of games. I think he's back from his sixth game.
That's not a bad one.
PED bust here.
Yeah.
The Colts need some defensive line help. Their pass rush is in a rut.
What about Zach Moss? I say that with a smile on my face. I mean, Zach Moss was great last season for the Colts.
Yeah, I could get behind Zach Moss.
Maybe Zach Moss. It's not a bad one.
Am I forgetting someone just obvious?
I know, I'm running through the teams right now. I mean, Bobby Okereke is good for the Giants, but I mean, E.J. Speed and Zaire Franklin are good.
Well, I will say the linebacker group has been a little underwhelming for me this season.
Okay.
But I'll stick with Autry, given the nature of the D-line position.
I guess I'll go Zach Moss. Good stuff there. Look at you.
Corbin, I certainly didn't half-ass it like Mark.
Corbin should have said, all right, guys, let's pick the rest of the schedule the rest of the way. KB, you go first.
Just pathetic by Mark.
Jerry Jones, what did he do yesterday? We have the sound. We'll play it next.
How about the man that iced the game in London a few weeks ago? Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, he's not a bad one. I mean, he's towards the back end of his career.
I still see him on about the 8th or the 9th hole. I get that he is older in age, but he still looks like a man that can play. The Colts will see him in a couple weeks. Colts at Vikings coming up here to start November.
Yeah, aren't we going to see, and I guess it really, really would have started this week had Tua been healthy. We're going to see what that secondary has now for the next several weeks. Like the next month and a half, we're going to find out basically if Chris Ballard was right with the secondary. So far, Jalen Jones, Nick Cross bringing back Blackman, all those moves were the right moves, were they not? I mean, Cross has had a good season. I think Jalen Jones has been he's at least been average, if not above average. I feel like he's been solid.
Well, I'd take career days from Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Caleb Williams,
I'm
Malik
trying to
Willis,
be nice.
C.J. Stroud's best game of his career. I would probably strongly disagree with that.
3 out of 4 good quarters against the Steelers, and then the fourth quarter happened.
Pat Forde going to join us here in about 10 minutes, talk IU football again. Wrote a great piece on Curt Cignetti. One thing that stood out to me is, I assume this conversation with Scott Dolson. Dolson had set out kind of 4 parameters for what he was looking for in a head coach. One was a former head coach, or obviously a current head coach, with a winning record, consistency, continuity with staffing, an offensive-minded coach, preferably developing quarterbacks, and then one who had been a recruiting coordinator.
Interesting.
And I think that's kind of those 4 things, obviously some of them seem obvious, but, they didn't want a coordinator necessarily from a high-level, program. Syracuse, for example, they hired Georgia's DB coach. No, very adamant. They wanted a head coach with a winning record. I think a lot of that has to do with culture and certainly flipping that over. And I would say no one has changed the culture more across the nation of college football than Curt Cignetti this year. And the recruiting coordinator angle is also interesting to me as well.
Yeah, I think Dolson's right, and obviously he has been right with how Cignetti has done this season. So again, coming up in 10 minutes, Pat Forde from Sports Illustrated, he'll join us. All right, let's play this sound. This is the news from yesterday. Now, this happened in the 9 o'clock hour. This happened basically, KB, if I'm not mistaken, basically when we were going off the air, right? I mean, 9:45, something like that.
Yesterday, yeah.
You started to see it.
Jerry Jones calling in from the owners' meetings.
Oh, yeah. So Jerry Jones does a weekly spot on 105.3 The Fan there in Dallas. The hosts are Sean Sharif, RJ Choppy, and Bobby Belt, okay? Well-known show, morning show. They've been going there, probably close to a decade now. He goes on every week, and obviously this year it hasn't been so good. 3 straight 12-win seasons. We know what happens in the postseason, and this year it's been a disaster, especially defensively, for the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm sure you may have heard some of this conversation already, but Jerry was not happy with the line of questioning why the team just, quite frankly, isn't very good. Take a listen and we'll laugh about it.
Let me tell you what I'll do. About it. I will let us sit down and look at the decisions we've made over the last several years. Okay? I'll look at it. Now, if you think I'm interested on a damn phone call with you over a radio and sitting here and throwing all the good out with the dishwater, you have got to be smoking something over there this morning. I'm not. And I really don't, and I don't even want our listeners to listen to me, to talk about, this is not your job. Your job isn't to let me go over all the reasons that I did something and I'm sorry that I did it. That's not your job.
Well, my job is to ask
why.
why.
A job, or I'll get somebody else to ask these questions, man.
Jerry, we're trying to figure out why the team is.
I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. You're not going to figure out what the team is doing right or wrong. If you are, or any 5 or 10 like you, you need to come to this meeting I'm going to today. There are 32 teams here. You're geniuses.
Jerry,
okay. Y'all really think you're going to sit here with a microphone and tell me all of the things that I've done wrong and without going over the rights?
Well,
now, listen, we both know we're talking to a lot of great fans and a lot of great listeners, and I am very sorry for what happened out there Sunday. I'm sick about what happened Sunday. Now, I'm not talking to these yahoos on the end of this phone. I'm talking to you, the fans that are listening this morning.
So again, your thoughts on that? I mean, he does basically threaten their jobs now. They are the flagship of the Cowboys. I don't know.
Be the equivalent of Jim Irsay coming on here.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's if those guys get any compensation, or if they could or if Jerry Jones could make a personnel move. He was an old crotchety man yesterday who I think is embarrassed how bad his team's been. They're the laughingstock.
What would be your follow-up there if you were those radio hosts? I think I might have gone with, okay, Jerry, will you lay out the positives?
Yeah. Well, also, how does it get fixed going forward? Yeah. I don't know what their other conversations have been. Like, the way that Jerry handled the CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott contract extensions and then not going after a guy like Derrick Henry in the offseason, the Cowboys have had good offseasons. Jerry's not wrong with that, but this one was as bad as they've ever been.
You mean Ezekiel Elliott at this point of his career wasn't going to?
Was it Rico Dwindle? Is that his name? I think I have him on a fantasy team. He got 11 points for me 2 weeks ago.
Well, that's not bad.
It's not bad, though.
I know I'll speak for myself. Me personally, I have not really been in that sort of situation. Obviously, we will have some awkward moments maybe with Rick Carlisle on occasion here on some Tuesdays, but I don't think to that degree there.
Jerry's embarrassed.
82 years old this week, right?
It was on his birthday. They got beat on his birthday. Yeah, his birthday was Sunday. He had to watch
For those unfamiliar with Jerry's reference there of, if you think you're so smart, you can come into this room right now. That was Jerry Jones from the NFL owners meetings there in Atlanta.
Yeah, I also don't view the owners as architects of football. Most of the owners. Look at some of these owners, how their teams do year in, year out. Usually. I do like the throwing the good out with the dishwater. That is a very old person thing to say. I feel like you have to be above 75 years of age to say you're throwing anything out with the dishwater. Am I wrong there? It's great for them. That's great for that show. I mean, there's audios everywhere. I mean, every local other radio station in the country, including us, is playing that audio.
Jerry Jones does post-game TV, like a media scrum outside of the locker room.
Oh,
and then he goes on this radio show every Monday or day after every game?
Yep, day after every game. And I don't know what else he does, but he always does those two things. Win or loss, he's got 1,000 people around him outside the locker room. And then he goes on. Yeah, what is it? They're an hour behind us, so it would have been, prime time. It would have been 8:30, 8:40 that he was on the air with them.
That is incredible.
It is incredible.
That man loves to hear his voice.
Yes, he does. Pat Forde, we love to hear his voice. He's from Sports Illustrated. What does he think of Indiana and the college football playoff and much more? Pat Forde, he'll join us next. 9 o'clock hour around the corner. It's a Wednesday right here on The Fan.
Some very deserved IU football talk on the horizon. The great Pat Forde going to join us here in a few minutes to talk about his feature on Curt Cignetti and Indiana and Nebraska coming up this Saturday. Again, that is big noon kickoff. So the Fox pregame show with Urban Meyer and Reggie Bush and Brady Quinn is
Matt
Mark
Leinart.
Ingram, Matt Leinart.
Oh, yeah. Ingram's one of the stars of he's kind of like their McAfee.
The who's who.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have enjoyed that show. That will be in Bloomington. And again, IU, Nebraska. I believe I saw 6.5 points, I think, on the spread there for IU over Matt Rule's bunch Saturday at noon.
Yeah, it's one of those things. We've been giving Indiana some love. They better not go out there and lose by 3 touchdowns coming up against Nebraska. We got Pat. All right, good deal. Pat Forde joins us here on the Payless Liquors hotline, SI.com, Sports Illustrated, the College Football Inquirer podcast as well. Pat, my friend, it's been a while. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Good to hear your voice again. Happy football season.
Yeah. It's been a fun NFL season, and we've had, Pat, some college football to talk about. Obviously, with Indiana football and Curt Cignetti. I know you wrote a piece a few weeks ago on Cignetti. I guess let's start there. Your initial thoughts on what Indiana and Curt Cignetti is doing, and how real is it that the Hoosiers could actually make the college football playoff?
I'm dazzled, blown away by what they've done. Love Cignetti's entire approach. To have talked the noise he did and back it up is highly impressive at Indiana. And, yeah, they're a legitimate playoff contender. Look at their schedule. And there's, I've said before, there's not many things more dangerous than going, and prematurely counting victories for Indiana football. But in this instance, the schedule sets up for them to really have a shot at it. I mean, they could easily go into the Michigan-Ohio State games undefeated, and frankly, Michigan isn't that good. But, you alluded to it, really huge milestone, I think, game this week against Nebraska.
Pat, I enjoyed your feature on Curt Cignetti. Thank you for the time, by the way, on this Wednesday morning. You laid out in there, and I don't know if that was a Scott Dolson conversation, kind of the 4 bullet points they were looking for in that head coaching search. And one was a head coach with a winning record, consistency, continuity, and staffing, preferably offensive-minded, and some quarterback development, and then a recruiting coordinator. I thought that was kind of a unique 4, and I don't know if that's exactly, Syracuse hires a position coach this year. It's not the same exact thing for every athletic department. So did you find that interesting that that's kind of how Scott Dolson had laid it out, given the issues with IU football over the years?
I did, yeah. He had his staff really study places like, North Carolina, Duke, Northwestern, Kentucky, Kansas, that have been basketball-centric schools but had, found the right guy in football and really kind of captured something. And, those things all kind of led him towards that checklist. The recruiting coordinator piece was interesting, but it's so important at a place like Indiana. And especially, recruiting is even more a part of the job now, whether it's portal or whether it's high school. And so you've got to have people who can not only sell a school but evaluate talent. And that seems to be an area where Cignetti has a real eye. To bring in the number of guys he did from James Madison, to bring in a quarterback from Ohio University, some other players from the MAC or the Sun Belt Conference, and they can perform at this level. That's impressive to me because, they got like 13 James Madison dudes out there kicking tail in the Big Ten. It's amazing.
Again, the great Pat Forde's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. He was at Oregon, Ohio State on Saturday night, so we'll certainly chat about that. Pat, the debate Andy and I had yesterday, and Curt Cignetti was asked the question, how do you like it here in Bloomington? What would have to kind of woo you away potentially? And if you start to think about potential openings, I think Florida's probably at the top of that list right now, or the most obvious one. Obviously, Florida's a better job than Indiana. But Andy brought up, what about Mac Brown at North Carolina? And as crazy as it sounds, but I think in today's day and age of college football, the answer could be different given the conferences. What's a better job, Indiana in the Big Ten or North Carolina in the ACC?
That is a good question. I'm not sure there's a huge amount of difference between them, except that there's just more competition in the Big Ten. I mean, Oregon has arrived with strength. Penn State is still Penn State. Ohio State is still Ohio State. Don't count on Michigan being bad for any extended period of time. Nebraska is showing signs of life. USC and Washington should be good, will be good theoretically. In the ACC, you've got Clemson, and you should have Florida State, but they're back to being dysfunctional. And after that, there's really no reason for North Carolina to feel like they need to take a back seat to anyone. The flip side of that is you might be in a one-bid playoff conference in the ACC versus a 3 or 4-bid conference in the Big Ten. But, I think from a coach's standpoint, you're probably looking at it as where can we win enough games that I can remain employed for a long period of time. That's probably a little easier at North Carolina. But I know this. I mean, Cignetti's 63 years old, for one thing. And he's not really probably out there looking saying, gosh, I can't wait to go get another job. He's been treated very well at Indiana. I think he likes it there. I would expect there would probably be a contract enhancement coming at the end of this season, provided things keep going. You look at North Carolina, and while Cignetti's seems to be a pretty young 63. They've got an old coach on their hands. They probably want to go young the next time. And I do think that North Carolina is one that will open. So the way things usually work is we go the opposite of what we had that didn't work. And I think they're not taking a 63-year-old guy at North Carolina.
Pat Forde, SI.com with us here on The Fan. I say this with a smile, Pat, and I know you have an opinion on it. And by the way, I want to dive into your thoughts on the Big Ten and SEC running things because I know from the pod that you guys have had quite the conversation on that. But, if they keep winning, and they, of course, Indiana, if they keep winning, we talk, seriously about them getting into November, not having a loss. Who will be the first SEC team to cry about Indiana's schedule? Ole Miss, Tennessee, or Missouri, you think?
All of them.
Yeah, probably.
They'll line up to do it. I mean, but let's look at Ole Miss's schedule and Missouri's schedule. I mean, good Lord. I mean, Missouri's non-conference schedule, the tough game was Boston College. Okay. Missouri has no reason to take shots at Indiana's schedule. Sorry. But there's going to be an unbelievable, unprecedented, I think, amount of lobbying, pot shots, suspicion of conspiracy and agenda setting by the networks and all that stuff. I mean, November is just going to be rife with playoff accusations and recriminations. It's going to be hilarious.
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up. Ole Miss had that historically bad non-conference schedule and then lost at home to Kentucky and Mark Stoops, which doesn't look like that's going to be a pretty good loss at the end of the day. Pat Forde with us. All right, Pat, so I talked a little bit about this the last couple days, but obviously we're so ingrained in what's going on with the Colts and NFL. Pacers starting up, but you have the Big Ten. What was it last week? You're the Big Ten commissioner and, of course, Sankey in the SEC meeting up. And, I mean, it sounds like these two conferences are trying to just completely run college football, and you better put our teams in the college football playoff and everything else. People maybe not paying attention to that storyline. What is going on right now with the friendship and the marriage of the SEC and the Big Ten? What are they trying to accomplish?
Yeah, the oligarchy that they won't call an oligarchy, won't admit is an oligarchy. It's an axis, a strongman axis between Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey. And, yeah, they're trying to run everything with the looming threat of, like, if you don't like it, we'll just leave and have our own league and our own playoffs. And it's obnoxious. It's, I think, appalling to the majority of the nation. It's unfair. It's dirty. But that's what they're doing. I mean, they've already gotten it to the point where the Big Ten and SEC are going to get more playoff money than the other leagues. And they've gotten it to the point where they will decide, they have decision power over what the playoff format will look like from 2026 onward. And they sat there at a, table or whatever, Sankey and Petitti, and basically threatened the selection committee. This has to go incredibly well, Sankey said. In other words, you're going to put our teams in, or we're going to get rid of you, or as close to getting rid of you as we can, because we're just going to make automatic bids for our leagues. It is unbelievably brazen, and the fact that they haven't, there's nobody with enough juice to call them on it, tells you where we are in college sports.
Boy, that is so true. Pat Forde, SI, is with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Pat, there was some headlines this week. Jed Fish, the head coach at Washington, in reference to the game you were at Saturday night, Ohio State, Oregon. I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but he said it looked like a game with $20 million rosters facing off against each other. First off, is that an accurate number? And secondly, how many $5 million plus rosters do you think there are in college football?
I mean, I was told that the Ohio State number is 20. Oregon, I'm sure, is not far behind it. So, yeah, that's probably – now, you know, again, are people exaggerating? I don't know. That's part of the problem with the current setup is there's no transparency. There's no documentation. You know, there's no payroll, at least public payroll. So that's kind of where it's at. But how many with 5 million plus? Oh, boy. I would think most of them in the Power 5 for sure, Power 4. You know, but where you are between 5 and 20, I don't know. But look, money's going to dictate rosters, no doubt about it. It kind of always did. People pretended it didn't and wouldn't talk about where the money was coming from, but a lot of players were getting paid for a long time before it was legal. So, you know, this is not necessarily new economics.
Pat Forde with us. Pat, who is the most bubblicious team right now when you look at the potential of the new college football playoff format? Who do you think is straddling that line the most?
I'm going to say like the loser of Tennessee, Alabama.
Okay.
Will be very bubbly on Saturday. I'm going to that game. There's a lot of good games to go to, but I think there's going to be kind of a real desperation there. It's not quite an elimination game, but it puts you in that on the bubble for sure. So I would say there, I would say, you know, whoever ends up second in the ACC and the Big 12 would be bubble teams. And from the Big 10, you know, I would say, you know, right now Indiana's as close as you got because of the strength of schedule. But if they stay undefeated, that takes care of itself.
Pat, we'll end with this, and appreciate the time as always. I think it's been a great year for college football. I don't know if it's the parity that maybe has defined it. You know, you don't have the obvious, you know, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, you know, national champion. What's been your favorite story? Vandy beating Bama? I mean, we look like we got a Heisman Trophy favorite in Boise, Idaho, and then Army and Navy are both ranked in mid-October. So do you have a favorite college football story so far this season?
All those things are awesome. They really are. I think my favorite thing just really, though, has been the effect of the playoff on this is that I just think you've energized so many more fan bases. You know, half the power conference teams right now can say, well, we got a shot at it. You know, we make our conference championship game in the ACC or in the Big 12. We could go to the playoff. You finish third or fourth in the Big 10. We can go to the playoffs. And those fan bases didn't have that excitement at this point in years past. If your team had 2 losses in mid-October, you were basically done, you know, from a playoff standpoint. You might have still had things to be excited about and to cheer for, but now you've got the whole thing to be excited about and cheer for. And I think we're going to see some of that drama and excitement and tension that goes along with the NCAA basketball tournament transmitted to, you know, by the time we're a month from now, still 15 to 18 to 20 fan bases still wondering whether they're getting in.
His name's Pat Forde. Again, he's going to be at Tennessee, Alabama. We'll be writing about that. You can check him out, SI.com, Sports Illustrated, and the College Football Inquirer podcast. What have you put on the big green egg lately, Pat? Anything? Chicken wings? What do we got?
Yeah, done some wings,
okay.
Done some burgers. You know, I haven't gone really ambitious. I did smoke a pork shoulder like in August, I think, but it's been a while. Football is killing my smoking.
I figured you've been traveling every weekend. Well, Pat, we appreciate the time. Take care. We'll keep listening. We'll keep watching. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
There we go. Pat Forde, SI.com. Good stuff.
Better IU resume. 11-1 and the loss is Ohio State, or 10-2 and you beat Ohio State but lose to Nebraska and Michigan?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I'm leaning towards 11-1 and you lose to Ohio State. The only reason I say that is
you might not have a ranked win.
Well, you may not have a ranked win. It's a very, very big possibility. The flip side is you're not going to be penalized that much for losing to Ohio State.
Yeah.
It's almost like
road.
It's almost like not a full loss. Does that make sense?
I guess, and I'm trying not to cater to, again, Paul Feinbaum's audience here, but Paul Feinbaum's audience, they also, I think, are important decision makers in picking the playoff. And I mean, I mean that a little tongue in cheek, but Greg Sankey's got some say.
Oh,
and
he's got the say.
The SEC has respect, I guess is what I'm getting at. I also think the SEC does respect Ohio State a lot. So that's why I look at it and almost think if you have the magical Ohio State win, it's their, and I guess Ohio State just lost, so maybe it doesn't, carry the same sort of gravitas that it would in a normal season. But I don't know, winning in Columbus, would that merit some weight? I mean, if you're starting to compare wins, and it's, 10-2 Indiana versus 10-2 Ole Miss or 10-2 Tennessee, what would that win mean? Of course, every time I say this out loud, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Did I literally just say out loud Indiana football could go 11-1 or 10-2?
Here's the thing. You have sports radio muscle memory when it comes to anything Jim Irsay or, the Chris Ballard conversation over the last 8 years. But there's no sports radio muscle memory on talking about Indiana football being in the college football playoff. There's just not.
I was an undergraduate at Indiana for 4 years. Do you know how many Big Ten games they won in my 4 years there?
I mean, you've given this number. It's 4. Yeah, not
3,
many. 3.
Not even 4.
Okay, not even 4.
They didn't even win one a year.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't know what to tell you.
29 in the Big Ten in my 4 years, and yet here they are. And, these are legitimate conferences. Yes, they haven't played anybody of serious substance yet. I think Nebraska falls into that category coming up. But, again, the rest of the season, they're going to get Washington next week, and it's going to be a 9 a.m. local time kick for Washington.
Let me use this as an example. I'm using Ole Miss. I might be picking on them. And by the way, I don't think Ole Miss is a college football playoff team. I believe they are eliminated. But they have Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi State. Those two last games aren't going to do much. But, for instance, Ole Miss played Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, who's terrible, and Georgia Southern in the non-con. And they lost to Kentucky at home. And the Kentucky loss is not going to end up being a good loss. Kentucky might be, a 6-win football team. So, I don't think they're going to have too much to complain. I look at Tennessee. They did face NC State in the non-con. But NC State at that point was number 24 in the country. And I think NC State, I think they're terrible this year, if I'm not mistaken. They are 3-4. They're 14th in the ACC. So, that's not going to be a good win. I think it's interesting here because the Big Ten schools here like Indiana, they're in the cool kids club. Because you're part of the Big Ten or SEC.
Right.
The domination of those conferences is real. What I'm going to find interesting, and this might, maybe have Pat on in a couple weeks, we can talk about this, is the SEC teams that are desperate, the Tennessees or Ole Miss or Missouris, they are going to bash teams like Indiana, their schedule, who they beat, everything else.
Notre Dame.
But here's the other thing. Will other Big Ten schools do that?
Yes.
Will we have Big Ten
100%.
on, or are we going to have Big Ten on Big Ten crime?
Because it's an unbalanced schedule.
Oh, sure it is. Look at Purdue and Indiana. Ryan Walters is dealing with that.
Ohio State and Purdue, for example, just because you brought it up, they've got Oregon, and obviously Indiana does not this season. Even Indiana at USC, I think would at least have something of note there, or hosting USC. Penn State got that this past Saturday. And remind me, the Big Ten championship game, they'll go off the college football rankings to pick those two teams?
I need to look that up. I believe so. Yeah,
so the top two teams in the Big Ten will come from the top two teams in the college football rankings.
Correct.
That are Big Ten teams.
I believe so, yes.
So right now, if you went off the poll, and again, we haven't had our first playoff poll yet, but if you went off of, the AP poll, you'd have Oregon, who's ranked 2 in the land, Penn State ranked 3 in the land. They would play in Indy for the Big Ten title, whereas Ohio State's 4 Indiana 16. For what it's worth, Illinois 22 and Michigan's 24.
I believe that's actually wrong. I believe it's the two teams with the best conference records at the end of the season.
So then tiebreaker would go to that?
I believe so,
Indiana's
yes.
going to have a great conference record, right?
I mean,
theoretically?
Theoretically, I mean, again, if we go by some of the scenarios you're talking about, they could have just the one loss and it would be to Ohio State. I am wondering, I know I brought this up. I'm not harping on it. I think it's weak. I know there are many people who disagree with me that say, well, if you're Indiana, you just need to get to a bowl game. But now the objective has obviously changed this season with Kirk Cignetti. I wonder them buying out of the Louisville game if that will hurt them. I think Louisville could be, at the end of the year, an 8-4, number 25 team in the country.
Yeah,
in other words, how much, if at all? I have no idea.
Just so 2020 with that. I hear you out, and you're right, but I mean, when you're Scott Dolson and whoever made that call, I assume it was Dolson, maybe Tom Allen had some influence on that. At that point, all you're thinking about is trying to get to 6 wins.
Is trying to get to 6 wins.
Not padding a college football playoff resume.
Again, it's crazy to say. They just can't. Like, I have not bought into Indiana. I have thought that the college football playoff discussion has been mostly silly. And I hope now that we're talking more about it this week that they don't lose to Nebraska. Does that make sense? Like, they don't need to spit the bit this weekend.
Be surprised, though, if they end the year with 2 losses, I'd be surprised. Nebraska has not wowed me. I think a little bit is still aura than anything. I mean, it is a true freshman quarterback on the road. I mean, I don't know if they've been overly impressive. Again, Michigan seemingly, Navy and Army throw the ball further down the field than Michigan throws it down the field this season. And then, again, you get Washington at a 9 a.m. local kickoff. What is it? Is it Michigan State? Is that the other game?
Yes. Yeah,
Michigan State hasn't done anything. So, when you start looking at the schedule, though, it's hard to see the big slip up. And I don't know, maybe I should remind myself the Maryland game, was it tied going to the fourth quarter? I'm trying to think what.
Yeah, Maryland at one point, it was 14-7 at halftime. It was 28-21 going into the fourth quarter.
Indiana led. Yeah. Northwestern, whatever. It was a 3-point game at one point in the fourth quarter. I guess I should probably remind myself a little bit more of that, but I don't know. If you told me right now 10-2 or 11-1, I think I would take 11-1.
Last thing on this for me, and listen, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think if you're an Indiana fan, you need to root for the great teams to be great and the middling teams to not be. So
you want Bama and Georgia and Texas to win every SEC game.
Like, to me, if
you don't want A&M or Missouri or those teams
exactly.
to win.
Like, to me, you want Alabama to beat Tennessee this weekend.
Right.
You want them to take care of them. You want
Texas to beat A&M when they play later in the year.
Exactly. You want a Missouri and an Ole Miss to lose another game. You want A&M to lose
you want
another
Notre Dame
game.
to lose, which I know for some IU fans that wear the candy stripes in the winter and put on the blue, green, and gold in the fall, that might be tough to do. But for our cross-dressers there in the Notre Dame football IU basketball camp, that might be difficult.
Do you see Shrewsbury picked 10th by the media? In the poll?
Bunch of haters.
How many are in the 18 are in the ACC now?
I think 10th in the ACC. I mean, that's hovering around a bit, right?
This is not the old days ACC. I think.
What do you mean? They've got 3 teams in the top 10 or 15.
Well, I'm wondering, are they a 6-bid league? What were they last
more
year?
Than that.
They a 5-bid league?
How many say the Big Ten should be all these bids? I don't see any Big Ten teams ranked in the top 10 this year.
ACC NCAA tourney bids in 2013 or 2023.
Yeah.
I need to look that up. I don't know what it was.
That was last year.
It was. That was last year.
I mean,
you have Duke and you have
got
North
NBA
Carolina
in the conference. That's why Jalen Harrelson wanted to come there, and he don't want to go to the Big Ten.
He was shunned the Big Ten.
Said no to Izzo.
Goodness.
Said no to the war chest in Bloomington.
A lot of people are saying no to Tom Izzo lately. Yeah.
Braylon Mullins, is that next Wednesday? Is he going UConn?
You're right. It's the 23rd. Remember last week I thought it was happening like last Wednesday. It's happening a week from today. It's happening on the 23rd. I think Hurley's the leader in the clubhouse.
I saw.
Yeah.
Rab Johns was putting out fires on the Peaks message board yesterday. I'm losing Harrelson and Braylon.
I mean, especially with the war chest.
Can't happen. Pop quiz in a few. 317-239-1070. 4-pack of tickets to Indy 11's finale. So go ahead and give us a call on that. That's coming up Saturday night. Again, 317-239-1070 on that. Let's do a speedy morning checkdown.
Yeah, let me just give you one here, just Colts-wise. Again, we've heard a lot from Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson this morning. Here's Jim Bob Cooter. How about that? Some JBC sound here in the 9 o'clock hour on Anthony Richardson, getting ready, putting in the work for Sunday.
You know, to play good on Sunday, you got to earn that Monday through Saturday. And Anthony's doing that. He's putting in the work. I'm excited to see him get that to pay off for him on Sunday, hopefully here soon.
Again, first practice coming up today. DeForest Buckner, Jonathan Taylor, among other injury things to watch. We'll recap it all coming up tomorrow. 3.5-point favorite, Colts and Dolphins on Fox coming up Sunday at 1. Kevin Kugler and Daryl Johnson. Pacers finale for the preseason tomorrow night. Rick Carlisle said to us, probably treat it a little bit more like a regular season game. So we'll see if the guys that rested on Monday night, Halliburton, Siakam, TJ McConnell, if they give it a go in the preseason finale. It's a week from tonight in Detroit for the regular season opener.
Major League Baseball, Yankees over the Guardians 6-3. That's game 2. So
all
the Yankees,
hail.
all hail. They're up
Jimmy
2-0.
Cook's naked.
Which has been a just an ugly series, quite frankly. Yankees have been sloppy, but they look
You're
far.
say that about Jimmy Cook naked. I was like, well, that's aggressive.
they've looked far the better team. The Guardians have also been sloppy. I'm
Man. Well, it was like
interested
the
to see what
Cannonballers
happens.
at Haverford Little League running around the
I
bases.
know. It's unbelievable. Sets up tonight. You have Dodgers, Mets, NLCS Game 3. You can catch that on Fox Sports 1. We'll have the pregame right here on the Fan at 7:30. You got anything else?
College football Friday night. Purdue and Oregon taking Purdue in 27.5.
20.
Is that dumb?
Buy that up to 28 or 28.5. Is it dumb? I mean,
Yeah,
most people
38-10 would be a heartbreaker for
most
me.
people would say it is, but new quarterback, unknown quarterback. They played better last week. Maybe that, Oregon with the big win, across the country trip. I don't know. Maybe you could cover. I don't know if it's one I'd put the mortgage on.
Well,
But,
I've already talked myself into it.
I figured you already have. So let's take a break, come back. Reminder, coming up in about 15 minutes, we have a pop quiz. We'll get back to the Colts conversation. Appreciate you hanging out with us on this Wednesday. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Corbin
Well,
Lingenfelter
no.
spraying to the pop culture fields here. The very poppy songs here.
Can I ask you something, Corbin? I thought you listened to like old country and western, like not the new stuff.
Yeah.
What do you listen to? Because you're playing a lot of, Britney Spears, Miley Cyrus, Taylor Swift. Do you also listen to that, or do you think that's what people want to hear at 9 o'clock in the morning? What's the thinking?
I think it's what people want to hear at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, fair
I won't
enough.
listen to this stuff.
Who is the country artist that passed away when me and you were in here? KB, I think you were off this day, and you were like legitimately sad. Who was it? Do you remember?
It was Toby Keith.
Was it Toby Keith?
It was Toby Keith.
That was like 6-7 months ago.
I found out that morning as I drove in.
Like me and
Gotcha.
Corbin had this conversation about Toby Keith, and Corbin was like bothered that he passed away, and I didn't know what to do because I didn't know anything about Toby Keith very much.
I'll be honest. Corbin's throwing a few curveballs at me here this morning with some of these re-entries, and that that was blasphemy that you thought
I'm
Taylor
sorry.
Swift earlier was Miley Cyrus.
I know.
There goes your chance of going to the concert in a couple weeks.
How bad are tickets? I mean, tickets are what? If you wanted to sit 605, what is that? Is it $1,000? I need to look it up. It's got to be $1,000, right?
You or Nikki into Pink? Maddie went to Pink over the weekend with her girlfriends.
No, but I know people that did, and Pink has been. I know people.
Maddie was rocking. She loved it.
She loved it. Pink had been in
loved it.
Lexington, Rupp Arena, and I know people who have went to that many
Pink
times.
went to Connor Prairie with her kids on Friday night.
Did she really?
How about that? She's
Okay.
one of us.
Isn't she do the thing where she's
Send
like
her up in the hot air balloon,
Yeah,
churn some butter.
where she's like suspended up in the air and does all of her flips and theatrics and everything in the air? Like she's got great core strength, is what I hear.
Yeah, unlike you and I.
Very, very much so. I have 3 quick stories. Can we get to them real quick here?
Sure. By the way, pop quiz coming up in a few.
Yes.
4-pack of tickets to Indy 11 season finale against Birmingham FC. Home finale, right? That's probably the better way to put it. Coming up on Saturday night. So it looks to be a great night for that. 317-239-1070. Our pop quiz participant will get those.
Yeah, so we'll get to that in about 10, 12 minutes. All right, number 1. This is all over the internet. I know you've seen it. Caitlin Clark nearly had a hole-in-one.
How about that?
Now, I was rooting for her to have a hole-in-one. I don't know if she's ever had a hole-in-one. And for this show, this matters because poor Kevin Bowen has golfed his entire life and has never had a hole-in-one.
No, and maybe next year with the Mizunos to bring me that joy, although I'm very happy about them. 17th hole at the Fort for Caitlin Clark, right?
Okay, is that what? So that's a par 3 what? Maybe.
Well, certainly from the back tees, it is very far. It's like a 3-wood. But, it looked a decent length, I think, for her and Lexi Hall. I don't know, 130, 140 yards there. Hell of a shot by Caitlin Clark. She's made the rounds here, right?
Yeah, where is she golfed at? I know you've seen more of this than I've only seen the news yesterday that she was a foot away from a hole-in-one.
Maybe, I don't know if she wants to out everything.
Okay.
But, she's putting them on social media, so I guess she doesn't care too much. It may be a country club on the west side.
Okay.
Maybe up in the Hamilton County area for a country club stop. And then, again, I think the Fort, especially this time of year, might have a few leaves in the green, but outstanding views. Great layout there. So
you put the clubs away? It's going to be 78 degrees next week.
Not like permanently away,
sure.
But for the most part, it's.
For the most part, it's winter. Yeah, understand.
It's
okay,
done.
So that's number 1.
And she's got that LPGA Pro-Am coming up, right?
She's not.
She's playing that Annika Sorensen.
I
not
believe
in the event,
yeah,
but in the Pro-Am.
I believe so. I'm asking this, and I don't know the answer, and you may not either. She's not like as good as like a Steph Curry or a Romo. Like those guys are next level good. Or is she?
I think that's accurate, but. I'm very impressed by the swing I see.
Yeah, well, better than me.
She's probably.
She might be.
She strikes me as a very good golfer, but to be fair to Steph Curry and Tony Romo, they are like a step below being a pro.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, so I saw this on Twitter as well, and it has to be real because it's on Twitter. The worst fantasy football team this past week ever assembled by a guy named Jack Attack. Do you want to hear this? You're going to be stunned by this. This guy in fantasy football, Jack Attack, scored 1.22 points in an ESPN league.
No, he did that on purpose.
Here's how it happened. You guys ready for this? Corbin, you'll love this. Dak Prescott got him 3.2 points. Dak Prescott did nothing. 178 yards and 2 picks, no touchdowns, okay? 3.2 points. He started Ezekiel Elliott. 17 yards, that's good for 1.7.
He's all in on the Cowboys.
He started Travis Etienne Jr., who got 2 touches, Let's see, what did he do? -1 yard, left the game at halftime. -0.1 points. Chris Olave left the game early between them and Tampa Bay. 1 catch, 5 yards. I think he had a turnover as well. -0.5. He started Calvin Ridley, 0. He started Dallas Goedert, who left early with no stats there for Philly as they played Cleveland. He started Marvin Harrison Jr., who had no stats. He started Tyler Bass from Buffalo. Why the hell would you start him? Oh, he's a kicker. Never mind.
I did too.
He got him 3.
He was terrible.
Then he started Dallas's defense, who allowed 47 points. Now, that's good for -7 in fantasy. That's how you get to 1.22. Now, there were some buys, some injuries. That is a terrible team, but even for a terrible team, that's the worst fantasy football single-week performance that I think ESPN.com has ever seen.
Boy, and that he's got to do it all. He's got to spend 24 hours in Walmart, in the Waffle House.
The Waffle House.
He's got to, you've heard of the 999 challenge, right, at the baseball game?
No, I've heard it. I've had a buddy do it. I know a guy that's done it.
9 hot dogs, 9 beers, and 9 innings. Somehow you need to go to a playoff game for all I care. Find the money to do that. Go with Andy's friend in New York. What else can we have him do?
Who, by the way, my buddy in New York went to both the Yankees games. He sat out with the bleacher creatures last night. Is he going to the Mets game tonight? I don't think he is. I think he's flying home. It's expensive enough in New York. He's going to restaurants and bars. I mean, my God, he's got to have $1,000 plus into 3 days. So I wanted to get that. And then the third thing. Do you have any opinion on Tom Brady taking over 10% of the Raiders? And they're like, he's going to be vocal in finding them a quarterback. He is going to be a face of the franchise. He and Richard Seymour bought into it as well. I know the NFL's come out a couple weeks ago. We mentioned this, but didn't talk about it very long. That his job at Fox, he's not going to be able to go to other teams' practices, and so that's kind of neutered his job at Fox. But I don't know. I don't think he's an owner calling games. I don't think I like it either.
No, I don't like Jerry Jones yelling at Dallas radio people. I don't like this. And I don't like Brady, so I guess this is fair. But why did I see Richard Seymour acting like he had ownership too? Is Brady in it with these guys?
Yeah, I thought Seymour had a part. Seymour was part of another group aside from Brady, who's got I think 4 or 5% as well. Brady's over 10. I guess Brady's he's over 10% of the Raiders. But the NFL did come out about a month ago and says if this happens, you're not going to be able to go to practices and facilities to get ready for your Sunday game. Of course, he can still get ready for a football game without being there at practices. But I don't know. There's just something I don't like about it. I don't know what it is. It's Brady.
Not to get into this, but I guess I will. Are there two ends of the male attraction category in the entire world than Tom Brady and Mark Davis?
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, Brady, great looking guy, and poor Davis has got to be right at the bottom.
I don't know if we need to do a deep dive into that, but
right.
That's a thought I had.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Maddie, if you're listening, feel free to call in. Google image Mark Davis while you're at it. But I don't know. It just seems like, very stark contrast, you would say.
But at least Davis is like, I'm not going to have work done. Brady's had a lot of work done.
Oh,
he's had a lot of work
Mark
done.
Davis, an authentic man.
Yeah, he's an authentic. Yeah. He's a rugged man.
Yes,
is the way to put it.
One of us, Mark Davis.
Yeah, he's one of us. So I just found that to be interesting. Brady a little bit neutered at Fox, but also still calling games, and now is going to be an owner as well. 239-1070 pop quiz will wrap up the show. Win some tickets, win an oil change. You can do so next. 317-239-1070 pop quiz up next here. It's a Wednesday on the Fan.
Well, not often we share a lot of traffic-related updates, and this doesn't matter until Sunday, but the Colts have alerted people in terms of the game on Sunday here. That I-65 kind of southbound ramp there, it's going to be closed for a couple weeks, or has been closed, started yesterday. Going to be closed through Halloween. So, again, we're talking I-65 southbound between West Street and Alabama Street. For 2 weeks, it's closed. So, if that impacts you from a Colts, Lucas Oil Stadium, downtown commute, obviously this goes for just more than Sunday's game with Colts and Dolphins, but you're going to have to exit at West Street there, which, I mean, I think
That's
most
okay.
people probably do that.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Head down, West Street, Martin Luther King. And,
yeah.
Coming in from that side, the JW Marriott, IUPUI side, or IUND side of downtown. But, yeah, just alerting people there. Again, that is the southbound ramp between West and Alabama, closed through Halloween.
Yeah, I was reading that. I mean, there's 19 different ways from Irvington I can get to Lucas Oil, but it's just a pain for some people. It doesn't really
probably,
impact me.
But
no.
certainly our north side listeners, west side, northwest side, et cetera, it could impact you.
All right, pop quiz 239-1070. Have you even looked at it? I just started.
Not, no.
Okay.
Is it going to piss me off?
I'm looking at it. No, it's not. It's not too bad actually. I mean, there's
it's short.
Yeah, there's a 1969 in here, which it's not too long ago. But there is a hockey question.
Are you sure about number one, Scotty? Really?
He said that with authority. He said yes with authority.
Okay.
So I'm backing Scotty.
I'll take his word for it.
All
All right, Andy Sweeney, give us a number.
All right, let's go caller number 3 today, Corbin. Caller number 3.
Elijah.
What's going on, boys?
What's
Elijah, how are you?
Cold.
Yeah, it is cold.
I'm out here at work freezing, but other than that, we're doing great.
Elijah, what do you do for a living?
Mailman.
Nice. Thank you for doing that. There are many days I think to myself, oh boy, when I think about the weather, I should think about our mail people first and foremost there. Yeah, I went coat this morning. I guess you've probably gone coat on more than one occasion already this year, right?
No, I'm in a long sleeve t-shirt and shorts.
Do you drop layers throughout the day? I mean, I guess you can come back to your truck. I'm always curious how the layers work for the mail people.
Oh yeah, I started with I had a jacket on earlier, and then I did one walking relay, and I was like, all right, taking the pants off, taking the jacket off, can't do this anymore.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
All
Well,
right.
thank you for doing that. It's a short pop quiz. That's probably where I'm positive. Andy Sweeney, go ahead.
All right, Elijah. Question number 1. The 16th ranked Indiana Hoosiers host 5-1 Nebraska on Saturday. We've talked a lot about that today.
In football.
Yeah, this is not Fred Hoiberg versus Mike Woodson. Who leads the all-time series between the Hoosiers and Cornhuskers in football?
I mean, it's got to be Nebraska, right?
Boy, Elijah, you and I have got the same wavelength there. That's why I said to Scotty a few minutes ago, are you sure?
There's no way it's IU. I'm going to stick with Nebraska. There's no way.
Elijah, I don't know if you heard me, but I asked Scotty earlier, are you sure?
Okay, I'll say IU then.
There you go.
I just wanted
There you
I'm
go.
not trying to be rude, Elijah.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure that you heard me there. I know.
You're wrong. We'll have to look into this. I don't know. I'll go with IU.
No, I want to double and triple check that one. All right, can you name the only division in the NFL where all the teams are above 500? AFC West, NFC East, AFC North, NFC North.
NFC North.
Colts play this division.
Yes, they do. It's best division of football. Question number 3. The Jags and Patriots play at Wembley Stadium in London on Sunday in the third and final London game of the season. There is one other international game on the schedule this season. Where will the Panthers and Giants play in Week 10? Sending our best. Frankfurt, Munich, Mexico City, or Tokyo?
I want to say Munich. I know it's Germany. I'll go with Munich.
Probably should send them to like Antarctica with this being Panthers and Giants
What
on
a terrible game.
All right, Elijah, 45 years ago today, the 1969 Miracle New York Mets beat the Baltimore Orioles to win the World Series 4-1. How many World Series championships have the Mets won since 1969? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
1.
Okay. Go, Elijah. How do I say? Is it Philip Gustafsson? I don't know. It's a guy, the Minnesota Wild, scored.
Flip.
He recorded he's the 18th goalie, okay, in NHL history last night as he collected an empty netter against the St. Louis Blues. How did I not see this? I love these. Of the 15 different goalies who have scored goals in the regular season and postseason, 2 have scored more than 1 goal in their careers. Who leads all goalies with 3 career goals scored? Evgeny Nabokov, Ron Hextall, Marty Brodeur, Billy Smith. And I apologize to Scotty. I'm not even looking at you. I know I butchered all those names.
I have watched 3 games of hockey my entire life, but the only name that sounds familiar is Marty Brodeur, so I'm going to go with Marty.
You're damn right.
Unbelievable. Corbin, play it. That's a 5
Corbin,
for 5.
Corbin doesn't know where the button's at.
Oh,
Did Mark not tell you where the button's at?
Spears again. Elijah. Unbelievable.
There we go.
Too easy.
Mark Dykton believes in our caller so very little, he didn't even let poor Corbin know where the winning sounder is located.
Right, which is smart there. Elijah, you seemed rather, I guess you kind of guessed on the last one. Did you really know the Mets have only won 1 World Series title since '69?
I did. I did know that for a fact. And the only reason I know that is in the third Men in Black movie, they talk about the Mets.
Unbelievable. Elijah, unbelievable. Stay warm on the mail route. Congrats, Elijah.
Stay on hold, by the way.
Stay on the line.
We have
Give me a blow change.
What's the movie Slumdog Millionaire? Have you seen that movie?
That is a great soundtrack.
But
we just need to play that soundtrack tomorrow.
It's a great movie. The guy, spoiler alert, it's been out for 15 years plus, where the guy, he knows every answer because he can go back to some part of his life. Elijah just did that. He went back to Men in Black 3
how about that?
to know that the Mets won the World Series in 1986.
Unbelievable.
I guess you want to go over them. IU holds the record against Nebraska 10-9-3.
Scotty, all the wins were like in the 40s for IU. Is that right?
They have to. Yeah, they have to be. Because once Tom was there, right? Tom Osborne, I don't know how many times they played, but I would imagine Nebraska won for that decade plus.
Nebraska won a bunch in the 70s, and then they barely played, obviously, until they joined the Big Ten a few years ago. Jim Irsay chiming in here on Twitter. Ring of Honor Sunday. D. Clark, number 44, one of the toughest Colts ever, and many teammates in town for the weekend. Peyton's got to be here, right, for Dallas Clark?
I would imagine. I mean, why would he not? I guess who else would be here that isn't normally around that you would like to see? T.Y.'s always in the building.
You're always curious about Bob Sanders.
Yeah,
he
Bob
seems
Sanders.
To be one. Obviously Marvin. We did see him at training camp. Edge seems to be here a lot.
Yep.
His daughter sang the national anthem.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was the opener, that Houston game. So I'd assume Dallas Clark on the anvil, right? You got him in the building.
Oh, I mean, you have to. You have to. No, you can't bring up, season ticket holder in Section 403. No.
Will we get a former Colts play caller, Parks Frazier tribute video?
I doubt it. No? Will Jim Irsay tweet about him? Hey, what's up, Parks? Give him a shout out.
Show a little shot of him in the
I got no problem
booth.
with it. Yeah.
One of the nicest humans I've ever met. Caroline Can, his wife, tremendous lady as well. Worked with her a lot.
Yeah, she used to work for Colts.com, right?
She did.
I thought so.
Yeah, former Larry Overton.
Just quickly, NFC North, that's the only division, all teams above 500. The Giants and Patriots will play in Munich. God bless everybody there. The Mets, 1986. And then the hockey question was Marty Brodeur because that's the only hockey player that people knew.
I agreed on Elijah's rationale for picking that one. Could we get all 3 NFC wildcard teams out of the North?
It's a great question. Oh, man.
I mean...
Okay, so I think...
What, are you going Cowboys?
Well, no, you need... Okay,
as your second...
The Eagles and Commanders, do both of those teams get in? No. That would be question number one.
Eagles win the division. Commanders
I would agree.
Regress to the mean.
Atlanta and Tampa Bay, do both of those get in? If you remember last year, the South just had one team. And then to me, the NFC West is a one-bid league with the Niners. I know that Seattle's tied at 3-3. I've seen enough of Seattle the last couple weeks. They're not a playoff team, in my opinion.
We've never had that, Scotty, right? All 4 perimeter. It's just hard, you just cannibalize each other, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bears, I think, are the one
I'm
that
still
you
with
question there.
Yeah, the Chicago falls off. They have a good season, but they're kind of like the Colts last year. They're kind of, last week or two of the season. I would say 3 get in. I mean, I'm bullish on the Lions, and I'm bullish on Jordan Love and the Packers. And
I'll give the Packers credit. I laughed at them for their backup quarterback plan, and
it worked.
They won both games, right? Malik Willis started?
Oh, yeah.
Colts and Titans?
Yeah. They won both of them. I mean,
they weathered that storm?
They lost in a 1-possession game to the Eagles. They lost in a 1-possession game, a 2-point game to Minnesota. So I'm with you. Today at practice, we're watching what? Who is back out there? Probably not Jonathan Taylor, but most definitely Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, Taylor, Buckner, do you open up that 21-day window? Where's Ryan Kelly at? And I just think in general, we've learned our lesson this year. What else? Last Wednesday it was Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs. It's like, okay, well, what else are you dealing with?
Yeah, like does Downs practice today? I would even say he probably doesn't.
And just any other injuries that might have happened. A guy plays the whole game and then discovers it on a Monday.
Yeah, I know Kenny Moore in and out of practice as well last week. So we'll find out what happens there. Check out the podcast, 1075thefan.com. Appreciate you hanging out with us. JMV at 3, Jake and Jimmy coming up at noon. Have a good afternoon right here on The Fan.